Hi, folks. How is everyone doing today? Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope you had a great weekend. All right, folks, we'll get started in about 2 minutes from right now. So I am looking forward to office hours today, and I hope you are as well. Hi, Rascal. I hope you had a good weekend. Hey, comrade. Woo, indeed. I'm glad you're pumped, my friend. Ah, MVC practice. Yeah. Hi, Chris. Happy Sunday. Anyone do anything fun this weekend or interesting or noteworthy? Rascal said they practiced MVC, which we all should be doing. A good example there. Naomi, I'm back. Good to have you back, Naomi. Hey, UV. UV Rays. Nice name. I like it. Kids on MVC worked on music. Sounds worthwhile. Absolutely. Live, honey. Hey, I've had the longest week ever trying to catch up. Hey, that's awesome. Glad you're catching up. But the cool thing about 100 devs, is you can go at your own pace, right? So if you need more time to catch up, that's perfectly fine. All right, so the timer has run down. Make sure I get the right screen here. All right. Hi, folks. How we doing? Hey, Zena. Hey, Scotty. Hey, Renzi. Adventures in the Everyday. Welcome. Good to see you here. Forgiving myself for falling behind. So Jazzy Pants 420 says, forgiving myself for falling behind has been a big part of my learning process. It's all about picking yourself up and keeping it going. Yeah. So forgiving yourself for small things like, maybe missing a class or missing an assignment is a major part of perseverance, right? So yeah, that's a great attitude to have. All right, so this is office hours. And for those of you who may be new to 100 Devs and weren't with us before the long hiatus in classes, Leon used to do something called office hours. So every Sunday he would just kind of sit down on the Discord or on Twitch here, and instead of having a really like a structured class, it was more of sort of a Q&A session, a discussion session. People could ask questions, that kind of thing. And just kind of like, touch base and give folks the chance to ask the questions that they might not be able to ask during class. Because, during class, the chat moves pretty fast, right? You got people asking questions, rapid fire, there's memes, there's emojis going, and or emotes, and it can be sometimes hard to get a word in, right? And so office hours are kind of a place to where questions are expected, and we do our best to answer them. So, in the absence of Leon's office hours, I'm kind of stepping in for that, and just seeing if I can, help a little bit with some of those questions. Hello everyone, lots of folks popping in here. And so, normally my streams are much more structured. We have a specific project or a homework assignment and we cover it from start to finish. But today we're going to be doing more of just Q&A, discussion, asking each other questions, that kind of thing. And we do have a couple topics that I want to cover. It's not anything going to take 6 hours or anything like that. The couple things that I do want to talk about today, probably a little bit later on, are how to ask better questions in the Discord help channels so that you can get a faster answer or more answers. I know it can be frustrating sometimes if you ask a question in the help channel in the Discord and you don't get an answer right away, or you have to go back and forth with somebody for a while before you get that answer. And so we're going to talk about a couple strategies for asking better questions, and then also how to stop using screenshots on Discord. And I know a lot of folks like to screenshot their code, screenshot their errors. We'll talk a little bit more later about how that can make things difficult for troubleshooting, and a couple of really easy alternatives that you can do instead, which makes things a lot easier for the folks that are trying to help you out. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Again, that'll probably be a little bit later after some more folks start to trickle in, but for now, we'll just kind of have a discussion back and forth. And speaking of that, I need to catch up with chat. Can't read and talk at the same time. All right, Zena says, I'm so behind on your VODs and the Traversy homework. What should I do? I would suggest skipping any of my VODs that aren't directly associated with the homework assignments that Leon has been assigning. Some of what I do is sort of extra, right? It's extra content. Maybe it works ahead a little bit. However, I do also do VODs that are focused on specific homework assignments. So if you're behind, don't feel like you got to watch every single one of my streams. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to, make you watch every single one of my streams. Feel free to just distill it down to just, if you need a little help with the homework, then maybe find the corresponding one of my VODs and watch that. But don't ever feel obligated to watch all of my content just to watch it. That's not necessary. Driving, we got people who are driving, people who are shopping. Okay. Happy to accompany you on your journey. Watching the Windows 95 VOD. Oh my gosh, which one? Was it the spinny cube or the one where we did the screensaver with the bouncy stuff? Hello, hello, folks. Oh, thank you, Dev Zuniga. Thank you, Dev Zuniga. Yeah, there we go. Thanks for everything you do. I'm never able to join live, but your help is the most valuable. Oh, thank you. Spinny Q. Thanks. Thanks, DX4. Yeah, Spinny Cube. That was fun. That was wild. Sloop says, I would love to have a broad overview of all the different technologies we've been using for the different apps. Like what all the different technologies do in the 14-hour app. Um, so are you talking about like what are the components of the app? Is that what you're asking, Sloop? Like what are the different like dependencies we were using or packages? Hey, Interplanet. Oh, I need to turn on captions. My stream closed captioner reminded me. Give me one moment to do that. If you want or need captions, you can turn them on in just a moment once I get them turned on. So 2 seconds. Okay, let's see. There we go. All right, captions should be on for anyone that wants or needs them now. You can hover your mouse over the right side of the stream window, and you should see a little menu that pops up with the closed caption icon. Feel free to click that if you want to turn captions on. Um, Let's see. O. Rossi says, I was able to get the to-do list connected through my .env file, but how do I start the code running? So, O. Rossi, the way to do that would be to do either npm start or npm run dev, depending on which one you have set up, whether you have Node or NodeMon configured. I would say npm start is probably the safest thing to do. And that should start your server running. So I'm not sure if you've done that yet based on what you've said. But if you have, then the next thing to do would be to open your port in your browser. So you would do like localhost 8000 or localhost 8500, and that would get your port running. Real Scotty says, I used your Traversy VODs, meaning mine. Used my Traversy VODs when I got stuck on the homework, like supplemental learning. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to watch my stuff at all, right? If you're good, if you're just cruising through the homework, and you're moving, you're moving pretty quick, feel free to only watch my VODs if you get stuck and you need a little hand, right? Yeah. I don't ever want my content to make you feel like you have too much to consume, right? My content should be supplemental. It should be helpful. Hey, Bella Jean. Welcome. I'm fine today. How are you? Hey, Gogo Yubari. Is that from Kill Bill? Bella Jean, what are we working on? Today we're doing more of just a Q&A type thing, to take people's questions and see what they're, just basically see what questions people have related to the course that we're enrolled in, which is called 100 Devs. See, trying to follow the question here. Oh, sloop, a traversy like handlebars versus node, etc. Okay, so we've got templating languages. Yeah, so handlebars and EJS are templating languages. Yes, they're exactly like Rascal said. They are the V in MVC. So if you started reading about MVC in the video that we were assigned for homework, you can start to separate the individual components of the apps we've been building into, modules, views, and controllers, right? Where modules is kind of our database stuff, models, I'm sorry. Is it modules or models? I'm spacing on that. But that's like our database stuff, right? And then views is basically like the stuff that renders the content for the client that sees that. And then controllers is the controller. It's the thing that controls the operation for our app, kind of like our server.js file or our app.js file. And that's, obviously oversimplified, but I'd highly suggest watching the video that Leon assigned. It's extremely good. Gogo Yubari asks, hey, Mayan Wolf, what is a good sign that a self-taught student is job ready? When is someone ready to start applying? Okay, yeah, so when are you ready to start applying? Well, what level of comfort do you have with interviewing? Can you answer basic interview questions about like what sort of projects you've worked on? Have you worked with groups? Because part of the sort of counterintuitive thing about interviewing for a tech job is that not everything is about how much code you know or how many languages you know. A lot of it is also going to be behavioral questions about how well do you work with a group? Can you lead people? Can you follow people? Can you take instructions from other people? Have you worked on group projects? Have you seen a project through from start to finish? Have you had a conflict in a group that you've worked with before? And so it's worthwhile to also practice those kinds of questions, because I can't tell you if you do X, Y, and Z, you're ready to get a job. That really depends on where you want to apply, what type of job you want to apply for, whether, maybe is it a senior dev or is it a, entry level dev position. but a big part of that is how comfortable are you in an interview type scenario. So if you can find, I don't know if you're in 100 Devs, Gogo Yubari, but we are just starting um, sort of the job hunt phase of 100 Devs. So if you'd like to join us, a lot of folks in 100 Devs are starting the job hunt like now. We're gearing up for that. So if you type exclamation point Leon, Leon, in chat, you can get more information about 100 Devs and maybe also get some job prep, some interview prep, I should say. Oh, thank you for the raid, Ian Douglas. I'm sorry I missed that. I was talking. Thank you so much for the raid. Good to see you. And we've got some folks in chat there answering a Heroku question. Thank you so much, folks, for helping. Pasova says, was the Traversy video mainly to get us to see authentication? Yeah, I would say so. But it's also a really good example of a fairly complex app, right? We've not only got authentication, we've got Mongoose that's building out database structures for us. We've got a pretty complex folder structure. So it's teaching us how to use routes. So routing requests from one location to another through our controller, through our server, or the app.js file. The app.js file in that Traversy tutorial does a lot of routing, right? If you look closely in that Traversy code, inside of the app.js file, which generally equates to what we would call server.js, there's really no like gets or puts or posts, those types of CRUD requests. There's really none of that. All the server.js file or the app.js file does is routes that content to other files where the actual CRUD actions are stored, which is a new way of building those types of apps that we haven't necessarily done before, right? Normally, we just put everything in server.js. And because, I mean, that's where it belongs, right? That's what controls the app. But no, you don't have to do that. As your apps get bigger and more complex, you're going to have to be more careful in how you build them, right? The structure, the scaffolding. And so I think that's what's great about the Traversy tutorial is it shows you how to do that as well. Debdy says, thanks for all the streams. They've helped a lot. Awesome. Thank you. Do you plan on doing anything OOP related in the future? So I have done in the past. We built, I believe way back when I built a calculator and an OOP related calculator. We may do more of that. It just depends. If we loop back and cover earlier topics, that'll probably be toward the end of the course. Maybe once we're in the hunt and there's fewer new things that are being introduced in class, right? Once the new things stop being introduced in class, as far as like code related stuff, then I might loop back and cover some older topics that could be reviewed. I've toyed with maybe doing like one designating like a stream occasionally to just a catch-up crew review, right? For our friends in the catch-up crew who we love. Maybe doing a catch-up crew review stream on various topics occasionally. I haven't quite figured out what that's going to look like yet, but thinking about it. Predator says, I'm curious how you would go about structuring your database when dealing with users who have their own data. What could the structure look like? Also, when should calculations take place? When inserting a document, should I calculate and store the value or do the calculation once the data is retrieved? So I'm assuming you're talking about something like an app where each user would have their own account and then there would be some kind of data associated or tied to each user, right? Well, I mean, the Traversy tutorial is again an example of this, right? So the Traversy tutorial, in the Traversy tutorial, for those who don't know, it's a authentication based app where users log in and they essentially they submit stories. So you could have a story about whatever and it's tied to your account. So it shows your information as the author. You are tied to it as the author. And there are certain private stories that only you can see, and then you can share other stories publicly with others, but you are attributed on those stories as the author. And so that's essentially what Traversy is doing, right? Because I could have 100 stories and they would all be tied to me. Now, how does that happen? Well, inside the database, there is a user database, which only has data associated with the user itself. So in Traversy's example, it's Google data. So the first name, the last name, the profile picture, whatever is um, tied specifically to that person, to that person that logged in. And then each of the stories is in a separate collection. Um, and each of the stories then is only tied to the user by the user ID, which is the unique value that the database assigns to that user. So the story just has, title, content, some, date created or whatever, and then a property for user ID. And so using that, every story can be linked to information about its creator because the user ID for each user is unique in itself. And since we have it on the story collection, that can be tied back to the user. And as far as calculations, like when you do those, that really depends on the calculation, right? If your calculation is dependent on conditions in the app when the data is retrieved, such as maybe a time, or you know, information about the user at the time the information is retrieved, then you would want to do the calculation at that point. But if it's information that's not dependent, maybe you want to do it before the data is stored in the database. It really just depends on what state you want the data in your database to be in. That's kind of app specific. I hope that helps. All right, catching up with chat. Give me one moment. Will Leon review Mongoose? It seems very useful. I'm sure that he will. Yes, we're just not quite there yet, but Mongoose is indeed very useful. And if you've watched many of my recent CRUD streams, I've just kind of started using it because honestly, it makes me feel more comfortable. Because I come from a relational database background, so the data is much more structured in relational databases. So I'm a SQL developer. During the day, my day job is I'm a senior SQL developer. That's really all I'd ever worked with before starting 100 Devs. And SQL, relational databases involve very structured data. Every data has a type, fields are required. Everything is, stored in tables and related to each other. And so Mongoose kind of gets me a little bit closer to that. So that's why I've started using it in many of my CRUD streams, even though we haven't explicitly talked about it in class. Personally, I think it makes the data easier to understand, but that may not be true for everyone. It might just be me. But yeah, I'm sure Leon will cover it and probably very soon. Bobby says, what that app needs, I assume you're talking about Traversy. What that app needs is picture upload and you can turn it into whatever. Yeah. Yeah. If you have, if you're storing images in like any really online storage repository, you could store the URL in MongoDB, and I assume there's probably image storage as well. I personally, wait, have I tried that? No, I really have only tried that for images that were already hosted online somewhere else. Um, but Mongoose is or MongoDB is pretty flexible. Hey, Code, I am having a good day. I hope you are as well. Hey, Grat Kane. Julian wants to code asks, are we coming to the end of new things soon? I would say so. I think Leon has kind of mentioned that really we're just covering, so we've kind of covered CRUD. I feel like the basic CRUD operations, we've had several classes on that. I've done multiple streams on that. I think, we're starting to get a handle at least on the concepts. Maybe you don't have the execution down, and that's okay. We're going to get plenty of practice on that. I think kind of what we're segueing into next is authentication. A little bit of React, and maybe some, Postgres, looking at like relational database type stuff, just a little bit. I don't think we're going to focus on that at all. And I might be forgetting something, but then I think it's going to go into more of the hunt. How do we get a job, practicing interview questions, doing group projects. So I know that some of us visibly recoil when confronted with a group project, but I think they are necessary, right? Especially if you don't have that kind of thing, if you don't have a history of working with groups on your resume already. What Leon is attempting to do here is simply just prime us with that ability so that we can talk about it in interviews and speak, with honest knowledge about working in groups. Because that is a thing that comes up in interviews. It just does, right? What's the time when you worked with a group? What's the time when you've led a project? What's the time when you've come into conflict with somebody else while working on a project, right? Those are things you've got to be able to answer. As daunting as working with a group can seem, it is necessary. Sidebar, any videos on callback functions? Uh, yes. Yes, I do. I have a video on promises and async await, but the first thing that we cover in that video is actually callbacks. So if you want to learn more about callbacks, I think maybe it was last month. It should be on YouTube already. Look for my most recent video on promises and async await, and you'll find information on callbacks there. Yeah, exactly, Jazzy Pants. Thank you for answering that question. And thanks, Rascal, for also answering a bunch of questions. Good. I'm glad that helped you, Predator. Rossi says, it looks like I don't have all the steps to get the to-do list executing. Rossi, is this which to-do list is this? Is this Leon's to-do list, I'm assuming? If so, then I do have a video on that. I do have a VOD on that from a couple weeks ago. And it's a, I believe Leon. So if you go to the follow along materials channel, Leon actually linked to it. And if you go to about 45 minutes into that video, that's when I actually talk about how to get the app running. We go through it, right? I show you, we go through it, getting that Leon's to-do list functioning. Darth Vader asks, have we discussed about .env files? So what about them? What are you wondering about env files? What they are, what you should put in them? What can you be a little bit more specific with your question? I'm happy to answer it. I just want to make sure I'm answering what you are wanting from me. Grant Kane asks, are you looking to stay, so me, are you looking to stay in your current company with skills learned from 100 devs or branch out somewhere new? For the time being, I really enjoy my job. Being a SQL developer is, I mean, it's something I've done for a few years now. This is actually where I am now is actually my first job with dev or developer in the title. Previously, I'd done sort of dev adjacent stuff, administering software, doing a little automation, just things on the side. And this is my first job as an actual dev. I went straight into a senior dev role though, just because I was able to accurately, in an interview, I was able to accurately demonstrate my past experiences and how they related to the role. And that helped me go straight to senior dev level. Um, so yeah, I'm happy in my current role. I really like my team. I love my team, actually. It's the best team I've ever worked with. Love my manager. Love my workplace. I actually had to take a day off on Friday just because I had too much PTO saved up. I was going to hit the cap. So, they're generous with PTO and benefits. So I dig it. I got to take more. I have to take more time off. Oh no. Find an employer that treats you that way. That's a good way to be treated. Does Mongo support something like foreign keys? So if you're thinking about it from a relational database structure, then that's probably the best analogy that I know of so far is storing, having a unique user ID for each user, kind of like I talked about earlier, and then storing that user ID in the content that the user has created. So if I have, multiple stories that a user has written, I would want to tag that with the user ID so I could just easily link it back. So that's the comparison that I would make there. Will we be done with class by October? So no, I don't believe so. I believe the new end date is sometime in November now. And that could fluctuate as well. I think Leon has said he's restructuring things a little bit. So we'll see where we land, but I think the current plan is November-ish. Yeah. But that could change if Leon decides to change the class structure, right? I think it just depends on how things go. This is the largest cohort that Leon has ever done, right? And so, sometimes plans go out the window. Does any past non-coding experience, so devs and you go ask, does any past non-coding experience count to answer those interview questions? Absolutely. And I want to be clear on that, that yes, you do not have to have like like a past coding role to use it in an example for an interview for a coding job. And I want that to be like super like in your head, right? Because especially for behavioral questions, if you have past roles in any customer facing field, like, I don't know, call centers, teaching, customer service, food service, like working in a kitchen or being, a waiter or anything where you had to deal with the public, you can probably answer all of the behavioral questions in an interview with flying colors. The important thing is to not see that experience as, or not portray that experience as lesser in any way, because it isn't. A lot of folks say, well, I was just I don't know, I was just a waiter or waitress, or I was just working in a kitchen. No, you were working in a complex, fast-paced, stressful environment and had to work with the general public every day. That's so difficult, and you shouldn't undersell yourself in that way. And a lot of times folks can't see their own value. And so that's why I think Rufio mentioned this as well. That's why I would highly suggest sharing your history and your kind of your self summary with someone else on the Discord, whether that's in a call or a group. Say like, okay, this is who I am, and then how would you summarize my, achievements or my work history so far? And having somebody else do it for you can really help take you out of your own head and better evaluate your own self worth, because you are worth it and you deserve this tech role. You just need to be able to sell that in an interview. Julian says, I can't wait to do more group projects. There are so many cool devs in the community. Yeah, there's tons of people here already that are working as devs. Absolutely. Jamarbo, welcome. Hi, how are you? I am well. Thank you very much. Welcome to the stream. I'm really behind in chat. I apologize. Hazel J says, any advice on technical interview prep? Ah, yes. I would suggest checking out my fellow stream team member, Varola Fox. I will do a shout out for them. Shout out Varola Fox. Check them out. They do Banky all the time. Tons of prep over and over and over again. They do Pomodoros and Banky. Absolutely check out their archive. So much content. Let me make sure that works. Work? Yeah, it did. It just took a hot minute. All right. Demorva says, I'm glad for following. Oh, thank you. DevD, yeah. So, if you're still getting errors, there's no harm in just starting over and, trying again with another approach. Because you could have just a typo somewhere that you're just not spotting. And so sometimes you just gotta burn it and start over. Managing frustration the whole time, right? Hey, welcome, Patch the Bulldog. Good to see you. Real Scotty says, getting 10 hours a week PTO? Really? My goodness, that is amazing. Wow. Oh, that's right, because of the SQL improvements you implemented. Yeah. Did you know Leon has been pronouncing Anki wrong? How do you pronounce it? And Kasava says, but we already know enough to get a job, so I think he set us up for success. So no matter what time the cohort ends, we're going to be in a great place. Yeah, absolutely. It's important to remember that, like Leon has said multiple times, if you've been following with the cohort and you're caught up currently, you have the skills to get a job, and many people have. And some of it just comes down to luck. And so a lot of it is, how do we keep stacking the odds in our favor and keep increasing our percentage of success, right? It's not that that you don't have the skills now. It's about how do we just keep increasing those odds. Posture check. Thank you. I tend to hunch like a gargoyle, so yeah, you can often see my awesome Riff Track shirt. Yeah, I love this shirt. Got a Sharknado on it. Right, wait, there. Yeah, Sharknado. Not sponsored. Kosova says, is there any way we can practice interview skills? Yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of it in class as we go forward a little bit. And if you want to practice now, there are groups in the Discord right now that are doing interview prep all the time. So feel free to create your own in a voice channel. Create a thread on in-house Hamilton or general and just say, hey, does anybody want to do interview prep with me? And I'm sure people will jump at that chance. Jack says, I have my first interview tomorrow. Congratulations. I hope it goes well. Mavi says, I'm planning to do banky groups so you can practice presenting at least one card. Absolutely. That's the way to do it. It's community taught, right? Just got a follow along materials shout out from Leon. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome, folks. Hello, if you're coming in now. Lord Chris goes, hello to you as well, my friend. Yeah, Vero is great. Letty, thank you. Yeah, Verola Fox is great. And also my other fellow stream team member, hello, it's Rufio. Rufio is really cool because they've actually been really focusing on getting a job. And so if you want to kind of follow along with their journey to get a job as you do your own version of that journey, definitely follow Hello, it's Rufio. And Rufio is great about doing collaborations with other streamers and bringing in professionals on her stream. She actually had a recruiter on stream talking about what recruiters want to see. It's wild. I don't know how Rufio finds these great people, but just amazing content from them. Curtis says, thank you for helping to-do list on Friday. No worries at all, my friend. Oh my gosh, Leon. Anki, but then I feel like Hermione. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Welcome, Leon. Or it says, thank you for running office hours. No worry at all. I've done this a few other times. It's been fun every time. That's why I keep doing it. Comrade says, Leon is right. I was interviewed for a role where I had no experience using their tech stack, and it was a huge moment of realization for me. They knew I didn't have that experience, and they still interviewed me. We have enough skills. Yes, absolutely, you do. It's more about, so what are interviewers looking for? What they should be looking for is not just how many languages do you know? How many programming languages do you know? Can you do, a dozen leak codes in 60 minutes? That's not really in the end what they should be looking for. What a good interviewer is going to look for is what's your ability and eagerness to learn? Can you work well with a group? Can you be trained? Do you show that spark, that seed, that ability to blossom into something more on their team? And also, they're looking for a culture fit as well. If it's a loose, laid back team, do you have a sense of humor? Can you kind of just roll with the punches and kind of be flexible and adaptable? Or if it's a team where they move really fast, can you change on a dime and not get hung up on small details? So it's a part of it is a culture check as well. And that willingness and ability to learn is huge. If you can demonstrate like, yes, I am, I can be molded, because they're also going to have, a bunch of processes, and they're probably going to have some kind of a manual or a standard manual that they're going to want you to follow. And can you be flexible enough to, pick up those processes, adapt to them, and then use them going forward? So that's part of it as well. Not just do you know all of the tech stack. That shouldn't be what they're looking for. Hey, Jim, welcome. Yeah, Aaron, I agree with you, Aaron Bush. I love that as well. Zero Chan says, hey, I found the YouTube videos and I see there's 2 playlists, cohort 2 and 100 devs. So look at the dates on those. I think, so I assume you're looking at Leon's YouTube channel. Learn with Leon's YouTube channel. I imagine, look at the dates and whichever is the newest playlist, that would be the one to follow for this cohort. Aptitude and attitude. I like that, Drunk Uncle Grandma. Yeah, that's a lot of what recruiters are looking for is aptitude and attitude together. And the balance of those in the interview, what they're asking for, the balance of those can shift, but they're always going to be looking for a combination of those. Chelsea says, Mayan's 1x speed is throwing my brain off. So many people watching me super fast on like 2x speed. I already talk fast. I don't know how you can follow me. D5 says, your VOD helped me kickstart my $100 project. Many thanks. Yes, I'm so happy about that. Yeah, and so that's a lot of the types of things I'm hoping to happen is that you can use templates and things, take my stuff and not only recreate it, but then modify it to make something that is unique to you, whether it's your $100 project or just another little app. If you can kind of use my stuff as a springboard to build bigger and better things, because I don't want you all getting hung up on the basic, the basic, Lego bricks. I want there to be a nice foundation of Lego bricks that then you can build up, a beautiful Lego castle on top of those. So that's the goal. Hey, Sanjay Apple, welcome everybody. Indeed, hello. Um, Robertola says, how do I, let's see, if I have URLs in the database, how do I get the pics? So if they're hosted elsewhere, how do you get them in there? Well, what you could do is you could, have the URL stored in the database and then use your rendering, your templating engine to drop them into your image tags. So, have the image tags already, and then just use whatever templating engine you're using, Handlebars or EJS or whatever, just have them drop the URL straight in there into the source field. And then, ta-da, image. You were just able to deploy the Traversy tutorial to Heroku. That's awesome, back into balance. It's rad. Hey, Mayan, glad to join the live. I'm paired with a mentor in the IT field. What would I ask in the mentor meetings? Well, really whatever you want, but you might, ask just general questions about what it's like in their day-to-day work. What is the culture of their workplace like? What experiences have they had in the past that led them to the place where they are now? Because I assume if they're mentoring you, they might be fairly successful. So how did they get there? What did they do? What were the lessons that they learned? What mistakes did they make? And they'll probably be very happy to share all of those things with you because we've all made mistakes, right? But the important thing is, what you learn. Hard mode for me at 2x. Aaron, is it ever okay to, this is a great question. I really like this. Is it ever okay to admit that you don't know something during the tech portion of your interview? So it's much better to say, I don't know, the answer to XYZ, but here's something similar that I've done with the thing that I do know, right? So if you can kind of just like spin that into, yeah, okay, I don't know the specific thing that you asked, but here's something similar and then how I did that. Versus trying to say, oh yeah, I know, and then and then pretending to just BS your way through it, and because that can often make you seem really nervous or unsure. Versus saying, well, okay, so I'm not entirely familiar with, you don't have to necessarily say I don't know. You could say, well, I'm not familiar with that specifically, but here's something else I've done that's similar, and I'm happy to walk you through that. Um, so turning into say, well, I don't know that specific thing, but I do have a lot of knowledge, and I want to share it with you. Okay, I'm just catching up here. Hey, homeless, welcome. Kasava says, okay, I like this. Kasava says, I am at that point where I just need to stop with tutorials and start breaking code and fixing it. After that, I will be better at taking risks with code. Yes, 100%. So there is such a thing as too much tutorials. And I think Leon calls that tutorial hell. It's where you just, all you can do is, is listen and code only what somebody else has told you to code without ever taking any risks yourself or trying things just for the sake of trying things, right? What you build in the end doesn't always have to be a perfect project. So, so take my stream from Wednesday, right? We had done two separate tutorials. We'd done Leon's code right here, and we'd done the Traversy code over here. And those were both tutorials, but then what I did is I ripped stuff out of it, ripped out those Lego bricks and smashed them together and made essentially Leon's code with Google authentication on top of it. In the end, is it going to be useful for anything? No. It's like, I literally said, it's like putting wheels on a fish. It serves, in the end, it really serves no purpose. However, what it did do was help us practice implementing authentication on an app. It didn't matter that in the end, this app wasn't going to be used for anything. It's about how do we put these pieces together and in different and more creative ways, which can then lead to the idea for something new and entirely different. So yes, Kasava, I agree with your assessment. Time to get out of the tutorials and start building and breaking things on your own. And not everything is going to work. You're going to encounter errors you never expected. And then that gives you practice Googling and asking others for help. Again, which we will be. So for those of you who have just come in, which is a lot of you, welcome. What we're going to be doing after the first break is at the top of the hour here, is we are going to talk about how we can ask better questions on the Discord help channel. And as Leon kind of mentioned this in Thursday's class, is that Leon and the mods would politely request that we stop doing so many screenshots in the help channel because they take up space and they push other questions off the screen. And so we're gonna talk about and explore some other ways that we can ask good questions and include our code without doing tons of screenshots. So that's what we're going to be doing after break, but I'm going to keep answering questions right up until break, and then we'll kind of segue to that, which is not going to take very long to go through. And then we'll go back to questions, and then that's going to be office hours. So that's the plan for today. Again, thank you all for joining me. So Naomi has a suggestion. So talking about interviews, one advice I have, if you got the interview, ask them what stack they use, language they use, programs they use, et cetera, et cetera. This way you can research and do some practice before you start. Yeah, and a lot of times that stuff is going to be in the oh, if you got the job. Okay, so I see what you're saying. So you're saying once you get the job, do a little pre-research on the stack that they used and all the things that they use in order to get up to speed as quickly as possible. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. It's important to, not drive yourself to exhaustion before you've even started your new job and then come in super tired. But, do what obviously you do want to be somewhat prepared when you step in for that first day, but don't work yourself up thinking you have to know everything on the first day. A good employer is going to train you. They may pair you with somebody specific on the team to train you. That's how it was when I started my current job. I was paired with someone. Or they might have a big manual of standards that they want you to read, or even a specific training to go through. Like, go through this, these training documents and then come back to me or with any questions, right? I've done all of those things at some point or another. Oh, we got to hydrate here. Deb D asks, how did your coding journey start? Yeah, so and this is a story I like telling because some folks have this misconception that they're going to be at a disadvantage if they don't have a CS degree or if they don't have some kind of college degree related to IT or coding. I do not. I do have a college degree, which does help with just maybe getting past that very first hurdle. But the cool thing about the tech industry is that what you did in college, or if you did college, is not terribly important anymore. They're more looking at what skills do you have, right? Um, and so yeah, I do have a college degree. It's not in anything IT or CS related because at the time, I tried one CS class in college, just one, um, and I incredibly disliked it. It was terrible. It was terrible. I didn't understand anything. It was a Java class. Um, and I was lost the entire time. I was that group member that nobody wants. I was the one like that couldn't really contribute, was kind of just hanging on to the rest of the group for dear life, like please don't fail me. Um, and so yeah, it did not go well. And so I went into the workforce thinking that I was not smart enough to code, which is a terrible thing. Nobody should nobody should come out of college, feeling that way about technology. Nobody should feel intimidated. And unfortunately, that was the environment that was created in that class. Um, and so, yeah, I spent a while thinking that I was not smart enough to code. But fortunately, in my first job out of college as an analyst, we did have to do a little bit of SQL or structured query language in order to just sort of hook up an Excel spreadsheet to a database, right? Just like create the connection and move on. Um, and I didn't even know what it was. I didn't consider it coding. But once I learned it was SQL, that's what it was called. I put that on my resume because straight out of college, you put everything on your resume, right? And so eventually that helped me land a position where I had to use much more SQL. Did I know enough SQL for the position? Probably not. Did I learn on the job? Heck yes. And that's going to be a huge component too, is just on the job learning as you go, being adaptable and picking up new things. And so that's literally everything I know that got me to where I am has been learned on the job. Of course, 100 devs, I'm learning through 100 devs, but everything that got me to this point in my career has been learned on the job. Absolutely no extracurricular classes or college or anything prepared me for the coding skills that I have now. All on the job learning. Deacon Tree says we need some stream beats. Ah, well, as far as an intro track, that's actually perhaps in the works. Stay tuned. Aaron Bush says, when I started with Python before this cohort, I was stuck in tutorial hell. So I started to do tutorial projects off of Medium. Um, but then in the end, I would try and add my own flair to it. Eventually, over time, I would add more and more stuff. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Start with a base, like something off of one of my streams, like my full stack template, hint, hint, GitHub, exclamation point GitHub for my GitHub. I have a full stack template out there that you can use to build whatever the flip you want. Um, and just grab that bad boy and run with it. That's the goal. Um, and so yeah, start with a base and then build on that. Make something unique. Wheels on a Fish, new band name. No Caffeine says, what if you use tutorials to build your own thing? Is it okay to implement the Google auth in our own projects but use his tutorial to do it? Yes, that's the point. That's what you should do. Don't just follow the tutorial and then toss that and go, to the next thing. Um, Use the tutorial and then tear it apart and build something new. That's absolutely the way to do it, no caffeine. Bobby says, oh, but I'm bad at coming up with ideas. Um, can't put that in the portfolio. Well, I mean, you could like I was saying, you can always start out with a tutorial. That's a good idea. Sometimes you need that for inspiration, and then maybe just add features to it or smash two tutorials together like we did. FD says I had a C++ class for 2 semesters. It was horrible. Oh no. Oh, Ken Pafu, I love that. I don't have a college degree. That's hear what they said. I don't have a college degree, and getting my first interview was rough. Yeah, absolutely. Leon says you'll apply to 60 places, and you might only get one interview. Only one job offer out of that. But once I got an interview, I made sure to ace it. Yeah. And I've been working at my first software engineering job for 5 months now, and it's great. That's wonderful. I love that story. That's awesome. Creatine says, hello, Mindwolf and chat. I discovered 100 devs today. Looking forward to joining the catch-up crew. Absolutely. You can start at any time. Like Creatine says, the catch-up crew is great. There's tons of resources. The catch-up crew has created a little ecosystem in themselves of resources and things to help you find the materials that you need. It's really amazing. When you go to the Catch Up Crew channel, I would highly suggest looking in the threads that are on the Catch Up Crew channel. Somebody has posted like an entire list of resources in there for new people, and it's just fantastic. So look at the threads, use those resources. And I wanted to say thank you, Tucker Tech, for the sub. Sorry I didn't mention that right away, but thank you, Tucker, for the sub. Much appreciated. And also, Synesthesia. Thank you, Synesthesia, for using those Bezos bucks, your Prime subscription, in between streams. Thank you so much, Deja. Homeless says, I want to start with 100 devs. How long does the course take? Well, for those of you who've been following along with at the current pace, keeping up with the cohort, we started in January. We're looking to end in November. However, the pace that you go, it's a self-paced course. So the pace that you go is entirely up to you. Just don't burn yourself out. That's the challenge, right? Is to take things at a pace that honors your physical and mental health and doesn't lead to you, going so fast that you crash into a wall and burn out, right? Liv Honey says, what is your advice for when recruiters are interested in you? Well, I mean, genuinely look at why they're interested. Are they, um, are they recruiting for the type of positions that you want to be involved in? Are they, maybe do some research into the companies that they're representing. Are they companies that you might want to work for? If so, maybe you initiate a conversation. Um, but be careful. So, there can be some kind of less than stellar companies out there, right? But just do your research. They're researching you, so you get to research them back, right? It doesn't have to be a one-way street. Eugene says everyone is so friendly. That is Leon. That is Leon's primary goal for the community. He has said many times on stream that if you're not going to be nice, you can get the f out, and he means it. Eclectic says, I am so close to quitting my terrible customer service job and going full time on the hunt. Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Danny Thompson tweeted out some great ideas for projects to work on to practice your skills. At one point, if you want to do something non-tutorial, he's a great follow for resources like that. Thank you so much, Strain. Danny Thompson, if you want to follow them on Twitter, sounds like they've got some good ideas. Hey, Rascal Catalina. Hi, welcome. Hey, Wisconsin. Cranberry, welcome. Have a research job. Obviously, how do I stop making dumb projects? I wouldn't call any project dumb. Every time I change a tutorial, I make it into a pun or joke. I'm trying to stop, but I'm motivated by it. Well, if that's what motivates you, then do it. We all need to have something that drives us, and maybe yours is puns. Puns are fun, right? It's important to also think about maybe your market. So if you're going to do puns, maybe make them clean puns or clean jokes that are going to be funny for everyone. So if someone looks at your GitHub, they're going to laugh at the joke instead of, like Leon says. So Leon has said this multiple times when people want to make, certain, targeted types of projects. Like that's okay, but think about opening doors rather than closing them because the goal is to get as many positive eyes on you as possible. So funny is great, but just make sure that the kinds of things that you're making funny are the things that are going to open doors for you rather than close them. Obviously says, I made a parallax website for a fake moving company because I thought it would be funny if the slogan was we'd like to move it, move it. Yeah, I would say that's perfectly fine. It's a cool website. It demonstrates, what your skills are, and it's funny. Yeah. Hey, Mel Mel. Hey, ship that code. Oh, and Driftwood there in chat. Driftwood has shared a GitHub of a good resource full of ideas. So definitely check out that link from Driftwood. Yeah, it shows personality. Exactly, Gratcan. I wouldn't be ashamed of that. I would say, this is my personality. I am a fun person. I have a sense of humor. And, if you hire me, I will share, I will share that sense of fun and lightness and humor with my workplace. And so in my work, we have so we all work remotely, right? And so our main method of communication among the team is Microsoft Teams, which is a chat app that's very similar to Slack. Um, and we share so many GIFs and memes. And of course, we get our work done, but we also share a ton of GIFs and memes with each other, and that's a big way that we connect as a team is through humor. Sharing funny stories or funny GIFs that illustrate a situation. That's like, it's not serious at all. And we talk about movies and TV shows. And that's a major way that we show our personalities and connect with each other. So that is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to show your personality, right? And I knew that somebody was going to say that. It's pronounced GIF. Yes, however you pronounce it. I knew that when I said that word, somebody was going to come back with that. UV says, how long is this stream going for? Gonna walk the dog and come back. I would say at least 2 hours. I don't really like to put an end, a guarantee of an end time on my streams, because every time I do, I'm wrong. They always go longer. So I'm not going to tell you an end time, but I will say, at least 2 hours, because, we'll have a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Discord, how to ask good questions on Discord, and then we will probably take more questions. Oh, El Toro. Thank you for the Prime sub, my friend. Spend those Bezos bucks. Chip one little sliver off of Jeff Bezos's pile of gold. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Raining says, how do I get ideas to make projects? Well, so if somebody could share again the name of the person to follow on Twitter who had a bunch of ideas, I apologize. It was something Thompson. I apologize. I would need to scroll back up to find it. And then also Driftwood shared a link to a GitHub that has a bunch of ideas as well. What is the catch-up crew? Zero Chan asks, what is the catch-up crew? Just joined the Discord and watching my first Leon video. Yes. So the catch-up crew is a channel in the Discord, and it is specifically for people who are starting now. It talks about resources that you can have a group of people who are starting at the same time and get that teamwork and camaraderie. And it's absolutely a channel you should be in if you're starting now. Matt says, you're the only person I've ever witnessed saying GIF properly. Hey, I got you. Is it okay to, Castor asks, is it okay to make the 100-hour project on an API to help with a community in an MMORPG game? So yeah, I mean, I would say so. As long as, the RPG is something that as long as you feel like you could confidently speak about this project in an interview and have it showcase your skills, right? That's the main goal, is to make this project so that it can be your crown jewel in an interview. So if you feel like that's going to be a good thing to talk about in an interview, absolutely. And a lot of, people in tech really love MMORPGs, Warcraft, or talking about like D&D or other RPGs. Yeah, those tend to be pretty popular in the tech world. Hey, Mine, should we take Mike, MKE Beast asks, Mine, should we take an internal referral from someone at a company that isn't part of the engineering team? Are you saying they're referring you to the engineering team, or to a team that's not associated with software engineering? Can you be a little specific there on your question? Like, what is the referral for? Communication through memes and GIFs, the great pastime, indeed. Raining asks, is it SQL or SQL? I say SQL. The original, so back in ancient history, back in the 70s, when the programming language SQL was first conceived, it was legitimately called SQL. And then the next iteration of it was shortened to SQL, but a lot of people still call it SQL, so you'll hear it both ways. But I've heard it both ways, which is a psych reference. But yeah, so some people say one, some people say the other. In my workplace, pretty much everybody says SQL. But we got to hydrate there. Okay. Danny Thompson, thank you for that. That was the person that had the ideas on Twitter. Future SWE, great name. Future SWE says, what if I start now when the cohort ends? Do I continue on if a new cohort starts? So at the moment, there are no concrete plans for another cohort after this one. Now, that doesn't mean that you're high and dry. The Discord will still be there. Leon has plans for continuing the journey after the official cohort is over. So the Discord will still be there. There's going to be an agency that's going to be ramping up soon. 100 Devs agency is going to be ramping up. And so, you're going to have these resources supporting you that maybe aren't, maybe there won't be classes all the time, but there will be all of these fixed resources that you can draw on. All right. Sorry, my dog is scratching there in the background. Tekhan says, what are some topics to talk about in LinkedIn to be more active on there if you are new to software engineering? So I actually don't have too much of a presence on LinkedIn as far as like posting content. For me, LinkedIn is more about building those connections with people that I want to, people in 100 devs or people that in companies that with positions that I want to potentially move to someday. As far as posting content like as if we were on Facebook, I really don't do that. Um, I don't know that Leon has talked too much about like what type of content to post on LinkedIn yet. I would say think more about less about just spamming content out there and more about making sure that your profile, like that your LinkedIn profile is absolutely 100% reflects the type of positions that you're looking for and your skills. So focus on your profile. Focus on your profile, on LinkedIn, on GitHub, especially, make sure that you have your GitHub linked on LinkedIn. And really tailor your professional presence versus just dumping content out there. Debbie asks, what's my dog's name? His name is Ben. He's a poodle. Future says, thank you for taking the time out of your life to contribute to our success. I feel like this is a dream. The amount of support and resources for free. Yes, absolutely. If you are new to 100 devs, that is one of the cornerstones of Leon's philosophy is that education should be free. And that's that's the main reason that I, like to contribute to this community and that sort of thing is that I also believe that education should be free. Like I mentioned earlier, the CS course that I paid who knows how much for in college didn't do squat for me. I learned everything, while getting paid on the job. And I've learned so much here in 100 Devs while also not paying anything. So paying money for a course or for a boot camp or for a college course really does not guarantee quality, right? There shouldn't be that type of relationship between money and quality. That should not be, you should be able to learn all the skills that you need from free resources and have assistance while doing so. And another one of Leon's goals is to potentially have you even get paid while you're learning this stuff. Um, and I think that's the goal with the agency that he's working on. Now, I don't know, all the details with that. I'm not in that inner circle, but I do know that's coming and very soon. An agency where with projects and clients and opportunities in that space. Oh, MKE says, okay, we'll do one more and then we'll take a break. All right. So, the internal referral, so they were talking about getting an internal referral from somebody at their company. The internal referral is for the software engineering team they work with at their company. Yeah. So, as someone who has had several previous roles, but I was not a dev, I still worked extremely closely with developers in a couple of my previous roles. I was not a dev. Again, I didn't do development. But I interfaced really closely with the devs and we had a really good relationship. So if this person has a great relationship with the development team at the company, then I think they would be a great referral because the dev team already says, well, I worked really well with this person and now they're referring somebody else. So that means that I'll probably work really well with this person too. So I would say that's an awesome referral to have. If somebody already works closely with the dev team and then they're like, And my friend over here, they would also be a great fit. Yeah, I'd take that referral in a heartbeat. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a break. I'm loving these questions. It's been a great conversation so far, and I'm eager to have more of it. However, what we also need to do is stay healthy. We need to, like I said before, we need to honor our minds and our bodies and our emotions, and we need to grant ourselves, the we need to be comfortable with the knowledge that we need to take breaks and keep ourselves healthy by taking breaks and stepping away sometimes. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull up a timer with 5 minutes on it. And we're going to take 5 minutes to go get a drink, walk a dog, stretch, look at something else. And then we'll come back and we will probably shift over to how to ask good questions on Discord and how to do things other than screenshots. So but we'll keep answering questions as we go, definitely. So feel free to keep asking. All right. So give me 1 second to get the timer pulled up. The Google timer is still not working, so I'm going to use a counterfeit timer. Not counterfeit, but not the Google timer. All right. Switching over to the timer. And I will see you all back here in 5 minutes. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left, so come on back whenever you're ready. Grab your water, use the restroom, take one last stretch, and then come on back. Okay, I'm just going to pause the timer here and then switch my screen again. So just covering a few of the things that came up while we were on a break there. JavaScript, so welcome crypto. They say JavaScript is kicking my butt. 100 devs is already changing my life. Yeah, and it will, right? Especially if you've never touched a line of code before in your life. It's going to be hard and weird and completely unfamiliar, but it's absolutely worth it. So you might say, well, is JavaScript the right language for me to learn? Like, what languages should I learn and stuff like that? But the thing with coding is that once you learn one language, it doesn't really matter what it is, you'll see the same general concepts repeated across many other languages. General things like true and false, and conditionals, and the sort of the logic that you're using, you'll see that repeated over and over and over again. The syntax might be different, but there are commonalities. Gratcane brings up a good point. They say, I think showcasing, so in regards to projects and what you should have out there, I think showcasing what you have is fine, even if every project isn't a banger. Yeah, they're not all going to be bangers. It gives you stuff to point to and say, I learned how to do XYZ from building this. Yeah, even if you don't have it on your GitHub, you could say, have it in an interview in your little bag of resources and just say, yeah, so about 2 months ago when I was, I was learning authentication, and here's what I discovered, and use that to answer a question. Yeah. If he says, can Vim be used as an editor? Technically, yes. And there are folks that are out there on Twitch that are extremely proficient with Vim, that they never take their hands off the keyboard and they can just do everything in Vim. It does have a terrible learning curve. I wouldn't say terrible, but like it has a large learning curve. It's very unusual in terms of how the types of commands it uses. It's very retro in that regard, and so it's important, especially at this point. And this is something that Leon actually wanted me to mention, so I will. And I agree with this. Is that at this point in the course, and Leon has mentioned this too, is that it's very tempting to start seeing what other people are doing out there on Twitter and Twitch, and the things that sometimes people insist on, um like to say, oh, well, you're not a real programmer unless you use Vim, or oh, you're not a real developer unless you use this particular framework, or oh, you can't get a job in with the MERN stack, you got to learn this whole different stack. And people will believe that, because they're thinking, oh gosh, I need to get this job. I mean, this person is saying that I can't get a job with the skills that I have, and I have to go and learn all these other things. And that is not true. But it's very tempting. It's tempting to start flailing around and grabbing at everything and trying to learn every little thing that you can. When at this point in the course, you should be comfortable with the skills that you have and start to really look at now building your brand, building your online presence, and starting to sort of solidify those skills, the skills that you have right now, for the job hunt, and becoming confident in yourself and the skills that you have. Rather than flailing around and getting a cursory understanding of a dozen different things, and then immediately burning yourself out and having no energy for the job hunt. Because remember, the end goal is how to get a job. I need a job. How do I get a job? And that is what Leon is priming us to do. The man has a decade of experience in this, and you really just gotta trust the process. Don't freak out. Control your frustration, and just keep rolling with it. That's another really important thing about being a dev, is rolling with it, being adaptable, and not, not bailing at the last minute, right? Because it can be hard sometimes for us to be confident in ourselves and trust our skills. We always think we need that one more thing and then we'll be successful. And Leon is literally laying out the path for us to be successful. We just have to walk it and not, wander off and look for the shiny thing in the woods. Rascal, in the response to the question whether Vim can be used for coding, Rascal says, I prefer a magnetic needle and a steady hand. I think I might prefer that to Vim too. But like I say, there's lots of people out there who are fantastic with Vim. But I wouldn't, would I say that, oh, should you go learn Vim? No, absolutely not. Use VS Code. That's what it's there for. It has so many wonderful tools and extensions that are built to help you. Just use VS Code. Uh, TechHan says, do you know any boot camp that will pay you a stipend to learn coding? That's Leon's end goal with the agency that he's creating. So feel free to stick around. And that's the end goal, is that eventually folks can get paid for doing these types of projects. No worries, Dav. Feel free to catch the VOD later. There's so many wonderful questions that are coming in, and I want to answer them all, but I also want to cover the topics that that I mentioned we were going to talk about tonight. So we're going to kind of segue over to that. Again, great questions. Feel free to ask them later when we shift back to more Q&A. But for now, let's just take a brief detour here. We're going to head over to the Discord, and we're going to talk about asking questions, how we ask questions, and a good format for asking questions that, as a question asker and answerer, the types of things that make it easier to help you when you ask the question in the Discord. So let me just get myself sorted out here. Okay. So if we look at the Discord, I'm going to switch my screen. All right, so this is the 100 Devs Discord. Just ignore what's in it on the screen right now. First off, I want to talk about the channels that we have available. So there are tons of channels where you can ask for help. So we have new need help, we have homework help, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, and general code. So whenever possible, if you're asking for help, please try to be as specific as possible, in the channel that you post in. So if you're looking for JavaScript help, post in the JavaScript channel. Or if you're asking for Node help, like with a CRUD app or something like that, post in the Node channel. Or if you're looking for help with a specific homework assignment, post in the homework channel. Now, so that's the first hurdle, right? Is posting in the right channel. That crash server in the background. So Rascal, that's something I'm going to get on later, is I have deliberately triggered an error. And so we're going to pretend like I need help with that error, and I'm going to ask the question. So yes, there is an error over here in my terminal. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to talk in general about where do I ask questions? And then we're going to talk about how do I ask questions? Oh, you're good, Rascal. No worries. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, actually, because yes, there is an error over here, and we're going to kind of talk through how, if I was stumped on this error, how might I solve it? How might I ask that question? Is there a way? Ooh, that's a great question, Gravios. Is there a way to search in all channels for a past answer? That was exactly the next thing I was going to mention. So there is a search function, and you can search for, if you just click in the search box, it's right up here in the top right. You can search for, from, mentions, has, before. So if you're searching for a certain term, you could type in, like, I don't know, node, and that would bring up various channels, or various users. Or you could just search for the word node. Or you could search for, let's say, okay, hang on, let's search for traversy, and you could do that as well, as long as I spell it right. And if you're looking for a specific issue with, like, the traversy tutorial, you could search for the word traversy and look through all of the previous questions that people have had. You can make this, I thought you could make this panel bigger. It's not letting me do it. But anyway, you can search through that. And yeah, there's all sorts of filters you can apply to your searches. So, but when you have a question, if you suspect it may be an error that other people have had, I would highly suggest using the search function searching for it, seeing if you can find where somebody else has asked the same thing. Yeah, that's a wonderful that's a wonderful question. So yeah, you can absolutely do that, and look at all these results. And that can be really helpful if like you're searching for something in the follow along materials channel. I've done that before. It's like I know that this resource was shared in follow along materials. I can search there. So yeah, that's wonderful. So the first thing is find the right channel. Second thing is search and see if anybody has asked the question before. And then if that hasn't happened, then you can ask a question, right? And so you can go into a particular channel and ask a question. We're going to kind of do a little demonstration here in a channel that just the stream team uses. I don't want to put a question out there and have people waste time trying to answer it when I already know the answer. But I also do want to, put a post out there. So one of the things that, Leon has mentioned is that he wants to avoid filling up these help channels with a ton of screenshots, because that can be really tempting to do. Is when you're getting an error in your code, you immediately go to the snipping tool or whatever, and you just screenshot it and you dump it on Discord and say, you might say something like, "Hey, I'm getting an error, please help," and then dump the screenshot. And that does provide some information, but it's missing a lot of context. And the best thing to do to get your questions solved quickly and answered quickly on the Discord is providing as much context as we can. Yeah, and so let's talk about okay, so that's all well and good, right? I say provide context and do all these things, but how do I remember that? Have been beating my head against an error for 2 hours and I'm frustrated and I just need help and I want someone to solve it, how do I remember what are the things I should ask or state in my question, in my post? Well, you can actually kind of remember those things by thinking about the PrEP framework, PERP. And that is a framework that we use to answer questions in interviews, technical questions. And that stands for parameters, results or returns, whatever you want to say, examples, and pseudocode. Now, you don't have to use all four of these in every single question that you ask on Discord, but it's a great framework to remember the types of things you need to include when you are asking. So what does this mean? Well, in the context of asking a question on the Discord, parameters is essentially what did you put in? So what were the things, what action triggered this problem? So is it, maybe in the Traversy tutorial, when you said npm start, something happened, right? What triggered this? What triggered the problem? npm start, or when I try to open the code in the browser, I get an error, something like that. So that's what you put in. And the R stands for results or returns. What do you get out? If you say, I got an error, okay, but be specific. So this kind of ties into the E, which is examples. Tell us what happened. What did I get back? I got an error. What are examples of that error? Can you share that? And we'll talk about specifically how to share that kind of thing in a minute. But I'm talking about in general, this is a good framework that can help you remember what you need to include with your questions. So what did I put in? What caused it? What did I get out? Was it an error? Was it a blank page? Was it just an unexpected result in the database? And then share examples of that output. Maybe my database entry was supposed to have a user ID attached to it, but instead the user ID property is empty. And then the last thing is pseudocode, which, that may or may not be helpful depending on your question. But, just in general terms, when you're asking a question, you should be as specific as possible. And also, I see a lot of questions that start by saying something like, I have a question, can someone please help? Well, if you're posting in the help channel, somebody's going to help you. So try to get straight to it. What's the problem? What did I put in? What did I get out? Give examples of your inputs and your outputs. And then if you're trying to achieve a certain result, like I want my user IDs associated with each of my, each of the stories in the database. I want user IDs associated with each of the stories in the database. So you could say something like, I'm trying to, create property user ID and attach, user.user ID to that property. So that could be an example of pseudocode as well. So the prep framework is a great way to structure your questions, kind of containing all of the context that the solver might need. Yeah, so you can so prep is not only for solving code wars and answering interview questions, it's also for turning it around and asking questions, on the Discord. And what the prep framework really does is it helps it exposes all sides of a problem, right? You're coming at it from every angle. You're coming at it from the inputs, you're coming at it from the outputs, you're coming at it from the examples of what's in there, and if needed, the pseudocode of how that could be accomplished. And so yeah, I think that the prep method is really, really useful in this case. So now let's talk about, okay, sure, fine. Prep is great. I kind of have my question. Now, you tell me I'm not supposed to use screenshots. So how do I paste code into Discord? Well, some folks just do a raw copy and paste, which is okay, but it's not great. The code can be kind of hard to parse that way. And instead, what you can do is Discord has some various options for built-in formatting of code. I know that Leon mentioned that in his stream that you could use GitHub Gist or Replit, but you don't necessarily have to. You could use a link. Yeah, you could use a link to your code outside, but if you just have a snippet, there are ways that you can just paste code directly into to Discord. Or like Letty said, with a link, if you have a full project where you're getting an error, um, what I really appreciate is when people have a full GitHub repo, right? You like if you have a full app and you're like, I have no idea where this error is happening, then upload it to GitHub and share the link to your repo in your question. Because what that'll do is it'll let me or whoever is looking at your code clone it into VS Code, run it ourselves, and help diagnose the problem that way. I was actually able to help somebody like this. Was it on Friday maybe? I was actually able to help somebody using that method because we were having issues, with sharing screenshots and code snippets back and forth. We just couldn't contextualize the problem. And then when they finally shared their GitHub repo with me, I was able to clone it, run it myself, and really zero in on exactly what the issue was. Um, okay, but so GitHub is great for whole projects, and you can just share a link straight to your repo and have somebody look at that. But if and like Rascal, so if you take it from anybody, take it from Rascal because Rascal is one of the most prolific helpers on the entire Discord. They help people all day, every day. And so Rascal says being able to reproduce errors directly rather than having to read off of a screenshot makes debugging a hands-on experience. So take it from Rascal. If you don't believe me, take it from them. GitHub makes things easier. Yeah, that was you, Curtis. Absolutely. Yep, who I helped over the weekend. Yeah, and so, but let's say that you're just working on a Code Wars or something, and you're like, I don't want to create a full GitHub repo for a single Code Wars problem, which is fine and reasonable. How can we also link smaller pieces of code or perhaps format an error message so that it's easier to read without using a screenshot? So let's explore some of the tags that Discord offers that can help us do that. There's several ways, and I'll show you. So here in this chat, I kind of have several of those examples, but we're going to go through each of those. If I want to if I just kind of simply want to share a general block of code, like a snippet, what I can do is, let's say I just want to paste in my error message that I'm getting over here in my terminal. I'm just going to copy this part for now. This is not what I would do if I was actually answering the question or asking the question, but just to illustrate, I'm just going to grab part of it and just show you how it can format some code. Let's see. Well, no, let's just do this. We'll do the whole thing. So if I want to paste code directly into Discord, I use the tick key on my keyboard, and I can enter 3 ticks, tick, tick, tick. And then I like to do a carriage return or an enter. Um, you can do shift enter to generate a new line without posting your message. And then I paste in what I want to paste, and then another shift enter, and then tick, tick, tick. Now, if you're wondering what the tick key is, on a standard English keyboard, it should be in the top left of your keyboard underneath the escape key. I can't speak for other foreign keyboards or anything like that, but on an English keyboard, standard QWERTY, it should be in the top left under the escape key. So tick, 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 shift enter, paste in your thing, and then tick, tick, tick. So now if I post that, we can see that it's formatted like code. Yeah, and Rascal has shown an example there of what the tick key looks like. If you've done template literals in your JavaScript code in the past, it's the same key, the tick key. So, comrade, I will talk about that in a little bit. How we can help troubleshoot other people's code. Yeah, that's a great thing to talk about. So, let's talk about that after we talk. So first, we'll talk about asking questions, then we'll talk about answering them. That's a great thing. Yeah, I like that idea. Um, okay. Yeah. So tick 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 tick. So this is great, and you can see that it formats it kind of just like code. It keeps the indents intact. Now, let's say I'm specifically want to paste some JavaScript code, and I want it to have some of the same sort of wonderful colors that that VS Code adds. It helps make it easier to read and easier to follow. So let's do that. So I'm just going to grab an app.use method here. You can do that in VS Code as well. You don't have to, but you absolutely can. So again, we're going to use the ticks. So tick, tick, tick. But right after the ticks, my first set of ticks here, I'm going to type JS. That's probably kind of hard to see, but I just typed the letters JS. And what that's doing is it's telling Discord, hey, please format this code as JavaScript. That's what I'm typing in here. And again, I'm going to do shift enter for a carriage return. And then I'm going to paste my code. Now we can see that it has added some formatting. Now it's not a ton, it's not perfect, but it is better than nothing. And so again, shift enter, tick, tick, tick. And now I have code that has some lovely colors in it, such as, formatting strings in green, formatting various things in other colors. It just adds a little bit of color and makes it easier to visually parse. Yeah, Zena, that's awesome. I was wondering how to format the code with colors. Yeah, it's super easy. Just tick, 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 JS, or if you're posting HTML, you can do HTML. Let's see. I think we can actually do that. Let's do it. So I'm going to go into my handlebars here, and I'm just going to grab some HTML. Let's do layouts. Yeah, this is just some nice HTML. So I'm just going to grab this, just a few lines to show. Do this, and then we're going to do tick, 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 HTML, shift enter. There we go, shift enter, and tick, tick, tick. And that's formatted as HTML. You can do the same thing with CSS or a variety of other languages. Tick, tick, tick tips, indeed. Just remember, if you don't remember anything else, remember the tick, tick, tick. And then that will help you at least get your code in sort of a more readable format, if not, a beautiful, colorful one. Yeah, CSS works. Lots of languages work. C#, C++, all sorts of languages work, including JavaScript and HTML and CSS, which are the main ones that we're concerned about, right? Because I noticed that a lot of tutorials out there for this don't mention that JavaScript has this formatting on Discord. And so I want to make sure that, yeah, I mentioned specifically you can get JavaScript formatting on Discord. Yeah, we plan to go. Yeah, we do plan. So after I talk about Discord and asking questions, we'll go back to Q&A for the end of it. Oh yeah, and Rascal, of course, as always, has a wonderful link about all of the language options that you can use on Discord. But for now, if you remember nothing else, remember tick, 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 paste your code, tick, tick, tick to close it. Okay. So that's how you can embed code directly. But, but what if I have like 50 or 70 lines of code? What if I wanted to, so this, let's see, let me find a good one. Hang on. So, okay, so this module here, this stories.js file has 148 lines in it. If I tried to dump that just raw into Discord, that pretty much that's no better than a screenshot, really. It's going to take a bunch of space. It's going to be hard to, kind of hard to parse. I would have to copy and paste the whole thing if I wanted to put it, in VS Code or something like that. For longer files, there is a better way. So for short code snippets like Code Wars solutions, or just if you know the problem is in one block of code, or you want to paste an error message, you can do it this way. If you have a longer file and you want to share that whole file, I will show you how to do that as well. Right. And Rassel says, unless you've got Nitro, you're limited to 2,000 characters anyway. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a character limit on messages, right? So you're going to probably bump that limit anyway. And so how can we share longer files? Well, when you're posting a message, you can click on the plus icon that's in the left of the chat box here. So boop, plus icon, and you can upload a file. Now, I'm going to drag this off screen for a second, but I'm just going to grab a file that contains some server.js code that I want to upload. It's just the server.js file from an app. It really doesn't matter what the content is. I'm just showing you the action here. So I'm going to grab this server.js file, and it's going to dump this into chat as a file in its own little module. And I can, if I click modify, I can change the name if I wanted to. I could mark as a spoiler for some reason if I wanted to. I don't know why I would do that, but so I can do that, and I can say save, and then I can just post this. Now, what happens when I do that? Look at the difference between what I posted here and what I posted here. So because I called the file server.js, Discord is going to read that as JavaScript, and it's going to format it accordingly. And the really nice thing is that it is going to collapse it down. This 100 and what is it? I forget how long this file is. It's pretty long. It's not as long. It's not 148 lines, but it's pretty long. And it's going to collapse it down into its own little module. You can expand it if you want, but then you can collapse it back down again, which is really nice. So expand, collapse. You can make it full screen or view the whole file at once. You can download it, which is really nice for the people that are helping you. They can click the download button, or you could even change the language. If for some reason you accidentally uploaded it as a text file, I think, let's see, if I click this, you can actually search for additional languages. So if you accidentally, uploaded it as server.txt and you wanted it to be JavaScript, you could change the language, to JavaScript, and it would format it accordingly. So lots of wonderful features here, and all I had to do to get that was click the plus icon and upload file. Okay. So does that make sense, what we've done so far? So, because what we're going to do next is, like I mentioned, we're going to see if we're going to pretend to ask a question on this particular channel that we're on. We're going to pretend to ask a question using the prep method, and we're going to use these new techniques that I just showed in order to, instead of screenshotting, we're going to actually be able to embed our code. Our error, we're going to embed our error message so that it's easier for folks to troubleshoot. So any questions on how I did this particular type of formatting? And I'm seeing that there's some wonderful questions in chat about other things, and I promise we will get back to the Q&A after we talk about these Discord topics. Absolutely, I'm loving the questions, and I'm seeing them. And yeah, we will get back to Q&A after we're done with the Discord here. Yeah, intelligence, that's a good point too. So if you have a bunch of code blocks, you don't have to put them all in your initial message. So you could say, and I'll kind of try to demonstrate that with the with the question we're gonna put together. Yeah, you don't have to put literally all of this in your initial method, right? If you have a bunch of files, a bunch of things you want to share, I would suggest either embedding it. If you have a one large file, you can embed it like this, or you could just say, "Here's the issue I'm having. Here's what I'm putting in. Here's what I'm getting out." And I will paste my code block in my next response. Prime EP says, maybe a strange question, but is there any suggested naming conventions? Not particularly. I mean, I think most people are expecting like that your server is going to be called server.js. So if you're sharing a file called server.js, there's going to be certain things that they're going to expect to see in there. I think as far as like naming files, there's a certain convention. But as far as like labeling things on the Discord, I think as long as you're in the correct, help channel, people are expecting to see certain types of questions. Yeah, there's not really much convention or organization there beyond what's kind of standard for these types of apps and files. Okay, so I'm not seeing any specific questions on this formatting. So let's see if we can kind of put this into practice a little bit. All right, so let's go back to my app. I'm just going to make this narrow for now, and we'll expand it again when we're ready to ask the question. So this is the Traversy CRUD tutorial. Okay, so we can see, I'm working in Traversy CRUD here, and I am getting an error. And as we know, for those of you who have done this tutorial, it's really large. It is a friggin' large app, right? And so I'm getting an error, and it's a really long error. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of complicated. Like I tried to, and I know the answer to this, but I'm kind of illustrating how you might, ask this question. So you don't have to tell me what's wrong. I do know, but we're gonna talk through. If you didn't know what was wrong, here's how you would handle it. Because I caused the error. I triggered it myself. I did it. It came the killer was inside the house. Yeah. But so when I did npm run dev, I suddenly get a big, long, confusing error. And my nodemon won't start, and I have so many files here, and I just don't know what to do, right? I might have been looking at this for an hour or something. This error is super long and confusing. I don't know where to look. I'm really confused. So I'm going to go to the Discord and see if I can get some help. Sorry, says, I'm surprised how many people post the end of the error. That's the wrong part. Yes. And we're actually that's a great observation. We're going to talk about that. Yes, absolutely. I love that you caught that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Discord and get some help. Now, let's pretend that I go to one of the help channels. Again, I'm not going to do that. I don't want somebody wasting their time trying to answer my question, which is not a real question. However, we're gonna kind of demonstrate how you might ask that question in one of these channels. In this case, I would probably either go to homework help, because this was a homework assignment, or I might go to node help, because we're using node and I'm getting some kind of error related to nodemon. So I might go to either of those two channels if I was asking this for real. So if I go to first thing I want to do is I'm definitely going to want to make sure that I am grabbing my error message. And I want to make sure that I'm grabbing the entire error message. Because as Kat's already mentioned, I see so often that people screenshot, especially when they screenshot, they only screenshot the part about, they only screenshot the part about the app crashing. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're asking the question, so I know that your app crashed, but because of what you posted, because of what you screenshotted, I have zero, like I can give you zero help. And so that leads to more back and forth, which leads to more wasted time, right? So if I'm grabbing the whole error message, what I want to do is make sure, let's see, make this a little bigger now. I think it might be cutting off a little bit. because I keep resizing the window. Oh no, it's good. It's wrapping. Okay, good. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm starting from the command that I put in and highlighting everything, because with Node and NodeMon, the real informational part of the error is at the start. So at the start of the error, that's where you're actually going to find what went wrong. There's all sorts of stuff that happens down below, but with Node and NodeMon, the good stuff is at the start. And so that's the person that's helping you. They're going to need that. And also what this is doing by copying the entire thing is it's showing me it's showing the person that's helping you, what command did you use to start? Did you use npm start, node server.js, npm run dev? What did you put in, right? What was the parameter? What did you enter? What was the endpoint? And then by copying the entire error, we're seeing both the result and the example too, right? So I'm just going to copy this for now. I have it. And homeless, that's a good point. So different people are going to start their apps in different ways. You might do npm start. You might do node app.js, node server.js, npm run dev. It depends on what scripts you have too. So that matters. What you put in matters. So I think I've copied the whole thing. We'll see in a minute. Now I'm going to make this bigger. And I'm going to start putting together my question. So again, let's think about this in terms of prep. So I want to say, what did I put in? What did I get out? And then what are examples of that? Essentially, those are the things I want to focus on. So I'm going to say, pretending I'm posting in a help channel, I would say something like, hello. And I'm not going to say, can anybody help me? Because I'm posting in a help channel, somebody's going to help me. I don't got to say that. I'm going to say, hello, I'm currently working on the Traversy Media. I'm probably going to, this is behind my microphone, so I can't really see. Hang on. I'm going to move my mic a little bit. Sorry. I can actually see what I'm typing. I'm working on the Traversy Media tutorial that Leon assigned for homework. Okay, so what this does is it provides some, and this is behind my head too, so let me make this, resize this a little bit for you. 1 second. There, make it more visible for you. Hello, I'm currently working on the Traversy Media tutorial that Leon assigned for homework. And I'll make that bigger. I can only make it bigger to a certain point, but hopefully that's better. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that you can see that a little better. All right. Hello. I'm currently working on the Traversy Media tutorial that Leon assigned for homework. Now, what this does is it gives the person who is going to help you some context. What are you working on? So if you just say, hey, I'm having trouble with the homework. Okay, fine. Which class are you on? I don't know what homework you're working on. Gonna need some context. So this gives context. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what are my parameters? The P in prep. What did I put in? I might say, I am done with the code, but when I type npm run dev in my terminal, I get a NodeMon error. Okay. So that's essentially says, what did I put in? And what did I get out? Well, I got out an error. So we also want to share an example of that error. So like somebody said earlier, we want to make sure that, the help channels stay as, small as possible without things filling them up. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could just have this as your initial statement, and you could say something like, I will post the full error text in a reply on this thread. And I'm actually going to turn this into a thread. The help channels will turn your question into a thread automatically. I'm going to do it manually here. So I'm just going to say create thread. And I'm going to say just uh, post that. Okay, so the help channel will turn it into a thread automatically. And now people can click into this and see what you're talking about. So now I'm going to go ahead and paste my reply, which contains my actual error message. So in here, I'm going to use the formatting that I've learned, and I could do one of two things, right? I could paste that error message into like a text file and upload it in that little embed, or in this case, I'll see what it looks like if I just use my ticks and format it that way. So JS, tick, 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 JS, shift enter, paste my error text, enter, tick, tick, tick. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So that looks pretty good. It's kind of long, but what it does, like Rascal was saying, is that, it does allow for you to, copy and paste and see things in another window if you need to. So this formats it pretty nicely. I can kind of read down through it and I can see, what did I put in? What did I get out? What was the error? And now what I would probably also share is a full GitHub link to my code. Because like we said before, this is a massive app. And so if there was a question about what did you do wrong, I might just go ahead and share the full GitHub link. So in order to do that, I'm actually just going to type in chat here, GitHub, go to a link to my own repo, and grab a link to that repo. So I can do that. I can just, basically all I did is I went to my list of repos, I grabbed a link, and I'm going to paste that in there as well. Oops, that's my, see, there we go. In here, that's my, there we go. In here, that's my, there we go. And of course now we've got the infinite loop of me not being on mute. All right, there we go. As soon as I flipped my own Twitch channel, it unmuted me. So that was fun. 2 times, yeah, echo, echo. All right, and I can also just paste a direct link to the repo that we're talking about. So what that's going to do is going to give the helper a ton of context. So not only the error message, but also a direct link to your repo. What did I put in? What did I put in? I put in npm run dev. What did I get out? I get a nodemon error. What is an example of that error? I've pasted it right here for you. And then in another example for the full app is there right there in GitHub. So I think that this should give enough context to solve the issue. Now, I'm sure some folks have been dying to say what the problem is. So did anybody catch, I know I kind of, went through that pretty quickly, but did anybody catch, what do you think the problem is? How do you think I triggered this error? Just by looking at this nodemon error. Yes. Katsari, yeah, because I pasted the full error, you guys can quickly see what's wrong, right? Exactly. It took you 2 seconds. Because I embedded the full error, y'all were able to see exactly what was wrong. It wasn't just a screenshot of like the last 3 lines, right? It was the full error. Y'all can see exactly what's wrong. And what it is authentication failed with MongoDB. Bad auth, authentication failed. I deliberately messed up my password. So the authentication failed and it couldn't log in. And Katsari says, I usually find my error about the time I put the whole help me post together. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that can help, just going through your own stuff step by step and saying, what did I put in? What did I get out? What did it do? That can sometimes help you identify the problem every single time. Yeah, absolutely. And so you saw how quickly you all were able to help the fictional me, just because I included all of the relevant information. I included, what I was working on, the result I got, examples of that result, and you all solved it in 2 seconds. There was no back and forth. There was no, hey, I saw you sent a screenshot. Can you just please link your GitHub? There's none of that. It just worked. So, does anybody have any questions about this approach to asking questions, or what do you think about this? How does it feel? For those of you who do ask questions a lot. Jazzy Pants says, just thinking about how to explain it makes your brain look at it differently. Yeah, absolutely. Just sometimes just stepping back from it a little bit and thinking about it sort of objectively, like how would I explain this to somebody else, can help solve it for you. How can we encourage others to use this method? Well, there are some automated messages that appear in the help channels now, that tell you not to use screenshots and that show you how to use the tick method. I would say just every time that you see it, still try to help the person, but be polite and say, hey, I can probably solve this quicker for you if you embed, the code using tick, 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 and post a link to your GitHub for future questions. So being kind about it, right? Being nice. We shouldn't shame people when they do post screenshots. um, maybe they're new, maybe they, just didn't read the automated message. That's okay. We've all missed things before, right? I think just kind of just repeating this and spreading the word. Here's how you can do it. It's super easy. It's not hard. Just again, remember, just tick, 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 JS, and then code here, tick, 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 right? Super simple. Create a code block that way. And yeah, super simple, super easy. So sometimes folks get daunted by this type of formatting stuff. So just being kind and showing them and just repeating that and spreading the message that way. Okay, so any other questions on what we need to do to ask better questions on Discord? Again, think prep, PERP, parameters, results, examples, pseudocode if needed, and then posting your actual code instead of screenshots. That's the way to do it. Give folks a second to think about if they have any questions. And then we'll also just talk briefly about, like Comrade Guerrero mentioned earlier, we'll also talk briefly about, okay, that's fine. How do I answer questions on Discord? Exactly. Grat Kane summed it up really well. Kindness is key, right? We might get frustrated when we see folks posting screenshots again and again and again and again and again when we don't want them to. But no one is going to learn if they feel like they're on the defense. Absolutely. And the whole point of this community is to be positive and to be helpful, right? So we need to treat these questions in good faith because that's what they are. They're people trying to learn. And so we might need to educate multiple times, but that's what you got to do. Yeah, I love that. That's a great statement there, Grat King. Okay, so let's talk about answering questions on Discord. Like Comrade Guerrero said, if I want to help, if someone posts a link to, to a GitHub repo, like a CRUD app on GitHub, how do I actually run that on my machine? And so what you would do is you would open the app, and the way I would do it is I would open a new VS Code window like this. So I would open a new VS Code window, and then normally I would just say clone git repository. And you can literally type in the URL of the repo that you want to clone. So github.com/whatever, paste in that URL, hit enter, and it will clone it. And you can just say, it will ask you where you want to save it. And then you just choose a spot to save it. And then just say open. And you'll be able to see their code directly without having to download it as a zip file and unzip it or whatever. You can just clone it. And after you do that, then really all you would need to do is just initialize npm. So like when you're building your own CRUD apps, you would do npm start, right? Npm init. Npm init. And then in order to install all of the packages that they're using in their project, you would just do npm install. And what that's going to do is, assuming that they have a package.json file, it's going to install all of the packages in that package.json file. So if you're downloading their full repo, what it's going to do is it's going to, it's going to look inside of their package.json file right here. Minimize this terminal here. And it's going to see that there's a package.json file and it has some dependencies that this project needs. And so it's going to go through each of those. It's going to just install them. That's you don't got to worry about hand installing every single one. If you're getting somebody else's repo, just do npm install. It'll install them all. And then you would probably, if they've done it right, they haven't pushed their env file to GitHub. So you would need to create your own env file and make sure that you have like a database string in there and a port and any other variables that they have. So the three things that you need to do when you clone somebody's repo or download it or whatever is you need to do npm init, npm install, and set up an env file. Make sense? And I've done that multiple times for people. It's so easy and it's so nice. When people link to their repos, I can just clone it down, run it myself, do those three things, npm init, npm install, create an env file, and run that sucker and see what errors I get. And I can troubleshoot much more quickly when I'm just running the code myself and making tweaks as I go. Oh, Tame Mister says that it's even quicker than that. You don't even have to do npm init. You can just do npm install. Okay, all right, nice. Gravio says, would there be a possibility of malware in a repo? I suppose. I mean, probably not from the folks that are posting on the help channels. That potentially a risk, but to be honest, that's never even occurred, to me. You Again, it's assuming that the folks coming to the help channels are coming in good faith. And Rascal says, if somebody's coming to a help channel, you can already assume there's like 20 minutes of frustration. So there's no need to add to this by being rude. Absolutely. Yes. And again, that's coming from Rascal, someone who has helped probably more people on the Discord than anybody else or close to it, maybe outside of the mods. Yeah, 100%. Priscilla says, I'm sorry, what is env file again? So env file is where you store your secrets. So it's where you store secret things like your database string. So if you're connecting to the database, you don't want to share that with everyone. You don't want people, Joe Schmo from Idaho connecting to your private database. That's especially important as you start storing user data and private things that could be harmful to other people if they were shared, not just yourself. And so that database string should be a secret. It contains your database password and other things. And you can also put other secret things in there, such as like your Google client ID for authentication, your secret Google ID. And so that way it's not just sitting out there in your server.js file for anybody to copy. It's truly private. And so then you can exclude your env file within your gitignore. So what gitignore does is it allows you to exclude things from your GitHub upload. So I'm not pushing my env file at all, right? That's excluded. And I'm not pushing my node modules. Now, why don't I want to push node modules? Because it's massive. It's a huge file. It doesn't need to be there. If anybody downloads my repo, they can just do npm install and it'll just take care of all that. It'll repopulate it. So yeah, so the env file is where you can hide your secret stuff. And then your gitignore is then where you hide your env file so it doesn't get pushed to GitHub. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, and Rascal has a good tip there. So I first go to the README to see if there are any instructions on how to get the app running, or if there are certain environment variables I need to require. If there isn't, a trick I use to find the needed environment variables is doing a full search in the project for process.env, because that's what you use in order to reference environment variables, right? And then I know what environment variables I need that way. That's a great idea. Searching for process.env will show you every single place an environment variable is referenced, and that will allow you to grab it. Seeking Truth says, never trust Joe Schmo from Idaho. Can't trust Mary Lou from Timbuktu. Intelligence says, I added this VOD to the pin message in all the help channels. Oh my goodness, thank you. Hi, Mindwolf. Can you please upload this useful explanation stream about Discord on Twitch? Yeah, it's all of my streams, every single one, are stored as VODs on Twitch for 60 days. And then after that, they get moved to YouTube, or generally way before that, after about 2 weeks, they get moved to YouTube. So exclamation point YouTube in chat, and there you can see all of my streams since as long as I've been on Twitch. So exclamation point YouTube in chat for my YouTube, and hint, hint, YouTube has less ads, so that might be the better way. A lot of folks only watch me on YouTube. It's up to you, your ad tolerance. I do get a little bit of, kickback from the ads, but it's for most people that's not worth it, and I totally understand. Twitch ads are wild, man. Are we taking another health break? Yes, we are. We're just wrapping up our Discord conversation, and then I think we're going to go back to the general Q&A for to finish out the last, I would say, last hour of the stream. We'll go back to general Q&A. Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead. This is a good time for a break. We'll take our break, 5 minutes, and then when we come back, feel free to we'll go. You can ask more questions about the Discord, asking or answering questions, or you can ask again. We can go back to general questions about whatever you would like. And there were some wonderful questions that we had. Prior to that first break, and I would love to answer some more of those. So, if your question did not get answered earlier, please ask again, and I will do my best, to get through even more of them in the last 60 minutes or so of this stream. So I've really enjoyed talking to everybody so far. So let's continue the conversation after our break. Let me get that pulled up. Alrighty. Oh, we got to hydrate. I'm sorry, Mavi. Let me do that for you. Thank you for that. All right, let's reset the timer, and I will see you in 5 minutes. Be healthy. All right, folks, come on back if you're coming back. We got about a minute left in the break, so fill up your water glass. Um, give your dog a head pat or two. Get your cat back on your lap, and we'll continue with the Q&A when we return. And speaking of cats, for those of you who may not have experienced my streams before, if you look in my channel points reward, I have a reward for naming a foster kitten. Um, and I actually do have two new foster kittens there. And normally I do like to show them on stream. These guys aren't quite ready for prime time yet, but I will be showing them on stream. And so if you want to spend the channel points, you can name one of them in the future. So just want to put that out there. All right, I'm going to pause the timer. Come back to video here. Actually, I'm going to flip it back to Big Mine again so I can see you and so that chat's more visible on the screen. All right. So welcome back, everybody. Again, yes, I do have two new foster kittens. I will show them on, when they're ready. They're not quite ready yet, but yeah. So those will be up for grabs as far as naming goes when they are ready. Cats love remote working. Yes, they do. Absolutely. Pets in general love remote working. Like, my dog loves that I'm home all day. He likes to bring me his toys when I'm working. Um, Tell your kids to stop when you come back from break. Yeah. The challenge is getting the cat back on your lap and telling your kids to stop asking questions about Minecraft. Kiss the babies. Yeah, absolutely. So okay, and Silva asking a good question there. How can you help? So, in talking about helping on Discord, how can you help if you don't have access to the database because the environment file is missing when I clone a repo? Yeah, so you just add your own. Just build your do file create, clone the repo, open it up in VS Code, and do file create whatever, just .env, and then drop everything in there. Drop your own. You're probably going to have to drop your own database string in there, because a lot of times you'll get an error if you try to access somebody else's database. If they have the IP locked down, you'll get an error on that. So just build your own env file. We've done it a bunch of times. You can do that. It'll be perfectly valid. As long as the variable names in the env file are the same, then you will absolutely be able to build your own and still make the app run. That's what I do every single time. And Rascal mentioned that's what they do as well. Um, any cat with a mustache. I'm waiting for my chance here. No, these are little solid black babies with little splashes of white. So they have a little like bow tie. So not a mustache, but they do have a bow tie. They're just a little freaked out right now, just coming from the shelter, which is understandable. Tuxedos, yeah. Okay, so what other questions do we have? We had some wonderful questions earlier on, and so feel free to ask. Name it better than EJS. Well, once you get one with a mustache, you can name it Handlebars. Sorry if somebody's made that joke before. I'm scrolling back up through chat, just making sure I didn't miss anything. Spent too much time with handlebars today. If I see another double curly bracket, it'll be too soon. Yeah, and so that's an example, right, of the different templating, engines that we can use. So far, we've really just used EJS and handlebars, but there's a bunch of different ones out there. And so just touching again on, what Leon is really trying to get across is that there's so many options, right? But for now, let's go deep, not wide. Let's just stick with what we've gone over in class and in the tutorials. Let's just focus on EJS, focus on handlebars, and then focus on React when we get there. And you don't got to worry about all the different possibilities that are out there, unless you're doing that specifically for a client. Yeah, for now, EJS and handlebars are just fine. All right. Any other questions about anything? I'm sure they're out there. So how are we feel? So if nobody has questions, I'll ask one. So how are we feeling about the basic like CRUD concepts? It doesn't have to be I understand traversy back to front, but how do we feel about the basic CRUD operations? And do you feel like that's something that you can, not necessarily type out from memory, but kind of explain and, copy and paste the components that you need in order to build your own CRUD app? How do we feel about CRUD so far? Just CRUD connecting to a database and displaying a front end. Feeling okay-ish, good. I get it. Just nervous about the keywords to know. That's fair. Jim says, Mine Wolf, I was looking at SQLite or Node.js. Have I worked with it? Would I try it in the future? I mean, I would probably try it just because I already know SQL. Um, and I mean, I think it's fairly common. I have not used it yet, but I imagine I will in the future. And we might touch on it in class. I don't know. If we ever do, I will definitely do a stream on it. Jazzy Pants says, definitely feeling better now. Express makes it pretty simple, absolutely. But I know there's a lot of nuance I don't get, and that's okay. That's the kind of thing that you just start to. The first thing you start to do is the way this kind of works is you start out with just a bucket full of Legos that somebody else has given you. It's not something you could necessarily do on your own. You start with a template and you have a bucket of Legos and you just kind of put the pieces in the spots where they're supposed to go. Just the way somebody else has told you to do. And then eventually you start, rearranging those pieces. So you're still using the pieces, you're just maybe putting them in a different order to build something different. You turn that spaceship into a castle. You're still using the same pieces, just in a different way. And then eventually you start to build more and more intricate projects that need smaller and smaller pieces. And maybe they're different pieces that didn't come in the set originally, but you use Google to find those pieces, to order those pieces. Now you have them, and you can build even more and more smaller and intricate Lego projects. And so really, it's just the Legos just keep getting smaller, right, as you go. You start to learn that nuance and understand that nuance, you know, on a better level. Comrade says, I need more consistent practice with it. Yeah, and we're gonna get that. Leon has said um, that we are going to do tons more CRUD projects, probably more group projects together, to get those line items on our resume. Right? Again, that's the point. Right? Is getting the that stuff for your resume, especially if you don't have any feel like you have any group projects that you can put on your resume now. We're going to be building out those group projects as we get farther in the course. More and more, just more and more line items for the resume that are going to be relevant when you're in an interview. Noob says, I'm I assume that's in the main JS. Do we always use an async? So if you're hitting the database, so if you're going out to the database, whether you're using Mongoose or MongoDB client, something like that, you generally want to make those async, right? Because hitting the database, depending on what you're doing, that could take a while, and you don't want other things that are reliant on the data that you're getting or sending to the database. You don't want those other things happening before before you've actually got the data back, right? If you're trying to render a page in your app that uses data from the database, you don't want that page to render until you have the data. So in general, that's how you would, that's why you would use async there. When you're talking to the database, you want to make sure that things are happening in the right order. Dark Throne, welcome, Dark Throne. Dark Throne says, how do you go about structuring your projects? When I was working on the full stack open homework, One of the projects has a bunch of directories like build, config, controllers, models, requests, utils. Yeah, so as our projects get bigger and more complex, we're going to need to add structure. Um, and a little bit of this, that is starting to get into like MVC, module view controller. And right now, what we're used to seeing is putting everything in server.js, right? We put in our all of our variables, we put in all of our middleware, we put in all of our CRUD operations, all there in server.js. But imagine if you were trying to build that full stack open homework or the Traversy media tutorial, and you put all of those CRUD methods into server.js. That would be the longest file in history. And that would make it pretty much impossible to, troubleshoot or figure out when anything is happening. And so when you start to create that structure and use routes instead of just putting everything in server.js, that can lead to a much more organized app that's much easier code to read. And somebody else could come in and look at it and say, like, yep, I know where to look to find this route and what's happening there. And it looks daunting at first, like, why are there so many folders? But once you learn to follow the routes, you can pretty much see, the logical groupings of things and follow what's happening in the app much more easily than if it was all in one file. Madeline says, "Are we doing Q&A right now?" We are. Yes. Yep, we are back to Q&A after spending an hour talking about the Discord stuff. We are back to Q&A now, so if you have a question, do feel free to ask. And happy Sunday to you as well. Also says SQLite, which is popular but requires callbacks only. Um, so yeah, you have options if you want, if you're trying to incorporate SQL with your projects. As with most things, there's a lot of options, right? What other questions do we have? Oh, Rascal has a good suggestion. So sometimes what we've seen, if we're looking at these more complex apps with a larger folder structure, um, sometimes you see duplicate file names. Like in the Traversy tutorial, I believe there were two files called auth.js. And that can be a little confusing, right? One of them's in a folder, one of them's at the root. It just looks a little weird. And so Rascal says, if the duplicate file name thing is too annoying, a pattern I see and like is adding the folder name to the file itself. So in routes, I've got auth.route.js. And then in controllers, I've got auth.controller.js. So you always know which file you're in. Yeah, and I really like that. That's a great idea. It prevents like you getting confused which file you're in and adding code to the wrong file. Like, I mean, I almost did that multiple times in the Traversy tutorial just because you'd be like, all right, go to auth.js. It's like, okay, which one? Right. Madeline says, mind you know if we will be learning how to work with money in 100 devs. Credit cards and taking payments seems really intimidating. Yeah, so I think Leon has mentioned a couple times just use I would so and I would suggest too, don't try to code like credit card accepting credit cards and that kind of thing. Don't try to code that yourself. There's tools out there that can help you with that. There's multiple things you can kind of just plug into your app that can handle payments for you, whether that's PayPal, I'm sure, has plugins. There's another one that's really common that I'm spacing. What's the really common one? I can't think of it. But yeah, there's tons of things you can kind of just Stripe. That's it. Yes. Yeah, there's Stripe. And you can just like it's pre-written in there, it's secure. Just plug that in and don't try to code it yourself, because I feel like if you try to code it yourself, you cannot possibly think of all the different ways that people are going to try to break in and steal data. And there's these companies out there like Stripe that are literally like thinking of that all day every day. And that's super important. Oh, and KT mentions with what Rassel said about the folder names, incorporating the folder names into the file names themselves. In the middle of watching your latest VOD where you do this with the To-Do app, this has been really helpful. Yeah. So you may not know this, but Rassel too has their own stream channel. Rascal 2, again, same name here on Twitch, so definitely check them out. They do really cool stuff, and they've been, using that logic of including the folder name in the file um, there also. So if you want to see examples of that, check out Rascal's stream as well. Rascal says, all my MVC duplicate files, name projects are going to get this treatment going forward. It also makes search and the open file thingy much easier to use. Absolutely. Yeah, and if you try to code that kind of thing yourself, taking payments and that kind of thing, you're just gonna, yeah, you're gonna open yourself up to personal liability if that data gets stolen, instead of Stripe or Paddle or PayPal that have an army of lawyers. It's yeah, you're gonna open yourself up potentially to potential liability if data gets stolen or money gets stolen. So absolutely, yep. Use plugins where you need to, and that's why we're for authentication. Authentication is another thing, right? Um, we're going to be using like Passport, and that and sort of pre-built things to, instead of trying to code our own from scratch, which I did do on a stream. I coded authentication from scratch on a previous stream, but we're going to be using outside help to help us with that because it is so complex and difficult. Um, so, working smarter, not harder, right? In this case. Exactly. It's important to learn things, but sometimes you got to work smarter, not harder. Yeah, and then Silva says PayPal and Stripe have APIs you can use. Absolutely. Yep. And we know how to interact with APIs, right? We've done it a whole bunch. We've built our own APIs. So you can do it. Preston says, if I could, every function would get its own folder. Hey now. That's a little intense, don't you think? Rascal is the master of complicated folder structures indeed. What other questions do we have? For all out of questions, I can wrap it up, but I'm happy to keep talking to y'all. Having a good time so far. Any kitten updates? Oh, I don't think you were here, but I did mention, yeah, I have two new foster kittens, and they will need names. So they're not quite ready yet, but yeah, I'll show them when they're ready. Nubish says, if I want to add pictures on my API, can I take it from Google? Yeah, so you want to be kind of careful if you are, building a site for like a client, or something like that, or something that, could be potentially monetized. You do want to be careful about using what images you use. You can actually, there's a filter in Google image search. There's a filter you can add where you can uh, like filter to like fair use images or Creative Commons type images. That's a filter on Google image search, I believe. And you can also use, so a site I really like for images is Unsplash, unsplash.com. They have a bunch of free images that have been put out there by the yeah, and like Kat Sari says, Unsplash, Pixabay, free pick. I really like Unsplash. I've used Unsplash on a client site. And you can search for what type of image you want, size, content, that kind of thing. And you're always going to be sure that the image you're going to be using is not going to be, copyright claimed at some point or get your client in trouble. Yeah, Wikipedia sometimes you got to read the license. Yeah. Um, Unsplash is something that I seem to always find what I'm looking for on Unsplash. Pexels, yeah, Pixabay, Free Pick, Pexels, great. Those are all great resources. So there's plenty of resources out there for you to find exactly what you need. Um, Pexels has some stuff I've used for royalty-free images as well. Yeah, Nutella, welcome Nutella. Hi, welcome to the stream. We're just talking about places you can find royalty-free images for apps if you're building web apps, uh, especially apps that you're building for a client. Newbie says, do I download the image and then store it in MongoDB? Previously, what I've done is, have used like linked URL that's hosted somewhere else. Um, but I think that there's, probably other ways you could do that. I'm not sure the pros and cons. You need to think about, how much size, how big those images are, how many you're storing, that could influence the method by which you store them. Oh, Nutella! Wow, thank you for the sub. That was quick. First time chat 30 seconds ago, and then bam, sub. Thank you. Welcome. Spend those Bezos bucks. Chip away at Bezos's pile of gold. When am I going to start on my 100 hours project? Yeah, so I mean, I have started. I got really excited about Materialize, like using Materialize for the visual display, because I feel like that kind of fits the aesthetic I was going for. I was trying to do something, just in like vanilla CSS, but it wasn't going well. But I think Materialize has the kind of display that I want, which is very sort of simplistic, um, very clear buttons, big sans serif fonts, very visible buttons. So I want to experiment with Materialize a little bit more to see if it can do what I want. I imagine it can. It seems pretty um, flexible in what it can do. And then maybe layering that on top of maybe handlebars or React when we get there. That's kind of where my head is at currently. Mine will say, sorry, Jim says, did you finish Stray offline? Are you going to stream some more Stray? I do want to stream more Stray. I have not finished it yet. Been extremely busy, but I do want to stream more Stray and find a good time to do that. Garce says, hey, I just started using Materialize also. Yeah, it seems really feature rich. Absolutely. Oh, Nutella, you're Brazilian. That's awesome. I love that we've got folks, tuning in from everywhere in the world. That's so neat. I love seeing on Twitter, the follower demographics from literally from everywhere. Like for my Twitter and for other folks on 100 Devs have followers all over the world, which is great. Oh, Gravius, that's a great question. What is Materialize? So Materialize is um, it's so if you've ever used like Font Awesome or something like that, essentially it's something that you can link to. Um, in your template, and it adds a bunch of like CSS features and functionality without you actually having to write CSS. So it sort of sits on top of your rendering engine, whether that's EJS or handlebars or something else, and it makes it look sort of like a Google interface. So you know how Google has very um, clean white boxes, like Google uses cards a lot, very colorful buttons, lots of shadows and sharp corners and very visible fonts. Materialize kind of helps make your pages look like that without having to write a bunch of custom CSS. Materialize, Rascal says, Materialize, React, Material UI, super popular and great UI library. Yeah. And Rascal actually put a link there to the Materialize website, materializecss.com. So if you want to follow that link, you can maybe learn a little bit more about it. And Mavi mentioned that if you need extra graphics or animations, you can also use Canva or similar sites. Yeah, so if you want to get into start like adding animations to your pages, yeah, you can just instead of building them yourself, just use what's already out there. There's tons of libraries, especially for styling and user facing stuff. There's so many libraries out there for that. Just find a look you like and then plug it in. Bara says, "Hi, hey Mayan, will you be covering much in React in the future?" Yeah, once we get there in class, absolutely. I kind of do stay kind of in parallel to what Leon talks about in class. Um, and so we haven't got to React yet in class, so I haven't covered it yet, but I am looking forward to getting to it, like genuinely. I haven't dug into it yet, even though I mean I could, but it's about That's another thing, like I talked about earlier. It's about pacing yourself, right? Like, could I get into React now? Absolutely. Um, am I going to? No. Just because I don't feel like I have the bandwidth for it. And I know we're going to get there eventually. So we just got to stay the course and stay on track and not get ourselves burnt out by trying to do too much too quickly. So if you feel like you have the bandwidth to get into React, then you can. And if you don't, then don't. Wait until we cover it in class. So I don't feel like, you got to do everything now. Um, and again, that's Leon, wanted me to mention that specifically on my stream today. He said, can you please talk about, not doing too much too quickly and getting into too many things at this stage in the process? So I'm mentioning it again. Turndown says, if you've never checked out codepen.io, there's lots of neat stuff you can look at. Yeah. So a lot of us actually started before we got into VS Code. A lot of us actually started out doing stuff on CodePen. I did a bunch of code wars on CodePen back in the day before we got into VS Code. Homeless says, I'm not comfortable learning React. I have fear of not understanding it. That's interesting. So I guess, how do you know that you won't understand it? If you don't try it, right? There's always that fear of the unknown. It's something that we all have. The fear that, like I started out, the fear that I wasn't smart enough to code. But once I started doing it, then I realized I was perfectly able to do it. And so, yeah, we have an innate fear of the unknown. The hard part is getting in there and, proving that fear wrong. Hey, Mr. says, have you ever played SQL Murder Mystery? I've never heard of that. I'll have to check it out. Count the Shells says, don't chase every shiny object that you read about. It leads to burnout. Yeah, and that can be really hard sometimes. I do want to talk about that. So there can be a lot of pressure, especially in the tech world. Everybody and their brother and their mother and their sister and their non-binary friend out there thinks that, the path that they took or the framework that they're using or the language that they started with is the best and everybody should use it, right? Oh, you got to use this framework. Oh, well, why aren't you using such and such? Or why aren't you using this specific library? People are going to try and shame you for not doing X, Y, and Z right now. Or why don't you know this already? Or you can't, that's the way you're doing it isn't right. That's not the way I would do it, so it's wrong, right? And you'll hear that. People will try to, shame you for the way that you're doing things. And you just got to shake it off and be like, nope, I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to stay on the path that we've been set. And because I know that eventually this path leads to success. And I trust Leon and he can get us there, right? So that's going to be a hard thing sometimes, but you got to say, nope, I'm going to just keep going with what we've been set. And I know, and I'll have so much time to learn all these other libraries and all these other cool little tricks as soon as I have a job, right? As soon as I have the free time, as soon as I have the regular work hours, then I can spend my nights and weekends learning all these other libraries. But I'm not going to do that right now. And that can be really hard sometimes. You feel like, am I missing something? Did I do it wrong? Is this going to mean I don't get a job? No, it's not. You just got to, pick your lane and stay in it, right? Strain says, I had fear about getting into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript too, and here we are. Absolutely. Yeah. Before I started 100 Devs, I'd been doing SQL for a few years, and I was like, web pages are magic. You mean I'm actually going to learn how to build a web page? Like, but they're magic. You just type it in the browser and it works. I don't know that I could ever build one of those. And now here we are. We're building full friggin' apps with a front end and middleware and a back end. And, we didn't just build web pages, we're building the whole enchilada. So, yeah, you can absolutely do it. You said, fear of the unknown gives me so much anxiety. Yeah, it can be a hard thing to get across. For some of us, the fear of looking unintelligent or uneducated in front of others, for any reason, even if it's in front of our friends, that can be very difficult to get past, right? The fear of not looking always like the most intelligent person in the room can be a very difficult thing to get past. And in the end, it can sometimes lead to you staying in your comfortable little box and never trying anything new. I've mentioned this before, but growing up, that's a real problem that I had a lot of the times. I would not ask questions because I felt like, if I asked a question, that would make me seem stupid. Um, if I didn't, it seemed like I was effortlessly smart about everything, then then that would diminish me in other people's eyes. But really, the truth is that as long as you can um, ask questions in a clear manner and clearly indicate that you're there to learn and be polite, ask clearly what you need, and what you give context to your question, kind of the way we ask, like using prep to phrase your question. As long as you do that, people are going to honestly want to help you. Um, and so that's a difficult thing to get past sometimes, but it's something to really practice. It's something I continually need to work on. I'm a streamer, right? And so sometimes I feel like I have to know, exactly what I'm talking about at all times, and just saying like, nope, I don't know the answer to that in front of 200 people. Um, that definitely helps me practice, right? Saying, no, I haven't used that framework, or but I'm sure somebody else in chat can help, that every time I do that, it frees a little part of me, right? It frees a little bit of those things that were holding me back. There's freedom in understanding that you are just a very small cog in the universe, and that you should feel free to grow in whatever direction you please. Getting kind of woo philosophical here. Ivan says, will your office hours be a weekly thing until the end of the cohort? That is a great question, Ivan. Um, so yes and no. So like I mentioned earlier, Leon used to do office hours every Sunday, and I do believe he intends to return to that, to basically do what I'm doing. Spend 3 hours answering questions on Twitch, not really, maybe covering something small, a small topic, but then spending most of the time just doing Q&A. The only reason I'm doing it is that, he's had some family obligations and that have prevented him from spending his, a big chunk of his Sunday doing this. However, I do think he does intend to resume. So when he does, I will continue streaming on Sundays. I'll just move the streams to after he concludes office hours. So it'll be office hours, then I will stream. And what I'll probably do is I'll go back to the kind of streams I did before on Sundays, which was more homework, project work, very structured, having a specific goal. Like, we're going to do this project, or, oh, we're going to do this homework and we're going to spend X hours doing it. So that's the plan. I will still be streaming on Sundays, probably just slightly later and with a different format. So great question. Rascal says a great answer to so going back to the previous discussion about people trying to guilt you into using different frameworks and libraries, is saying, because this way works and my goal is to make the thing work and nothing else. That's a great answer. I like that answer. Just make the thing work. Get it shipped. Exactly. Mommy says ADHD takes me places. Yeah, for those that, have ADHD or other, other things going on in their brains or their bodies, it can make us experience this journey a little bit differently, right? Maybe makes it harder to focus, maybe makes it harder to stay on the path. And so I definitely recognize, there are additional struggles that some folks have to stay on that path. And so maybe your path is a little bit more meandering than others, but it's important that you're making the effort to stay on the path. In the end, that's all you can do, right? Making your best effort. Arce says, thank you for the advice. I've got a wind of inspiration from keeping it coding every day. Absolutely. Overcoming yesterday's problems have given you motivation to keep working at it. Yeah, small wins can really give you a lot of energy, right? Imposter syndrome is so commonplace. It was the same in the bartending industry where I come from. Yeah, everybody experiences it. I still experience it. Sometimes, at work, I'll look at a new project and I'll just be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. How, how? But how I get started on those is I ask somebody who has experience with this particular, project. I'll say, hey, can you just take, 5 minutes and help me figure out my approach to this, to this project. And then I get a framework going and then I can just jump into it. Welcome Ghost says, needed this talk. Thank you. Awesome. I'm glad this is helping. Strain says, I still get anxiety about answering questions wrong in the Discord channels, Driftwood. Even for the people it looks easier, we can also struggle. Keep fighting with the best of their ability. Yeah. Answering questions wrong means you still tried to answer a question in good faith, right? You tried. And maybe you learn from the right answer that somebody else posts. You can say, like, oh, okay. Yeah, I never would have thought of that approach, right? You're like, well, this is how I would do it, but then, oh, but then this other person did it so much better or more efficiently, and I can use their approach in the future. Rascal says, the more you know, the more you realize you don't and probably won't ever know. It's about setting your personal goals and achieving them no matter what tools you use to do so. Yeah, you run your own race, you walk your own path. It's not about anybody else, it's about you. And in the end, hopefully, you getting that job. Eclectic says, a quote that has always stuck with me when it comes to learning is, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe stupid is not the way, like, I would put it, but yeah, be content to not always be seen as the smartest person in the room, right? Be content to be the one who feels like everybody else in the room is smarter, but sees that as an advantage because you're learning from them. Personally, I I love being the new person on a team because that means that there's tons of people who are way more experienced than me, and I can learn from them all day, every day. Rather than, if I ever feel like I'm in a role at work where suddenly, like, I am not only the most knowledgeable person, but I'm not able to teach anybody else what I know, then it's time to move on, right? If there's nobody to teach and I feel like I've topped out in my knowledge and I'm not learning anything, if I'm stagnating, then I'm out of there, man. I'm done because that's not where you want to be. You always want to be learning every single day. Mommy says, I know I don't know, I'm already ahead. Absolutely. Professional. Oh, welcome, professional. Thank you. Yeah, I always have a great time doing these. So much fun. Intelligence says Leon and mine office hours podcast. I would love that. That would be rad. I would dig a podcast. Maybe not my own podcast, so I wouldn't have to run it, but being on a podcast would be cool. So I could just, sit down and talk. Count the Shells says advice for the first 3 months of starting a software job. That's a great question. Yeah. So for the first 3 months, it could go a variety of ways. You might be thrown directly into a project, or hopefully you're going to be given some kind of training or be paired with somebody else on the team. Um, so for example, in my case, I spent the first 3 months of my current job really just like I was given a project. So I was given something to do, start to finish, but I literally had another team member like holding my hand the entire time and saying, okay, here's where you go to find this. Here's the documentation with all the steps for what you need to do and where you need to, put your code and scripts you need to run and that kind of thing. And, just let me know if you have questions. When you have questions, let me know. Um, and so, I would take two little baby steps and then I'd have a question and then, two more little baby steps and say, well, this documentation doesn't look right. And then, spend an hour troubleshooting. And so, you're gonna start slow. And so for the first few months, you might only get, one or two things done. But you're going to be learning and absorbing the entire time. So, and it's not just going to be learning code, it's going to be learning processes. So, for example, when do I need to file tickets? Where do I file tickets? Who do I need to email when, something breaks? Is there an on-call schedule? How do they do, on-call type situations? What's the culture like? Is there, when are the stand-up meetings? um, all these little things that aren't directly related to maybe, the actual physical act of coding, you're going to be integrating yourself with the company also. And you're going to be a sponge. The goal is for those first 3 months is to be a sponge and absorb as much as you can and ask questions. I've talked about this several times before. I made the mistake on a previous job of not asking questions as quickly as I could, and I got myself in trouble because I didn't. I did a project wrong because I didn't ask questions because I thought I had to seem smart by just knowing everything right away, and that is not possible. Completely impossible. You got to ask questions and to properly absorb this stuff. Obviously, like use chase the recommended videos on YouTube and learn 3 new frameworks. Wouldn't necessarily recommend that, right? Right? But okay. Ravi says, same in finance. The people who get promoted are the ones who speak confidently about stuff they don't know. Yeah, and that can be a challenge, right? Occasionally, you're going to get people who are just loud and they talk about stuff they have no real understanding of, and I mean that might get them ahead, um, but it's not the way to learn. It's not healthy. So yeah, you can't prevent that, right? Sometimes just the loud people get promoted, and that's kind of a fact of life. But in the end, if you are the one, asking questions and learning the skills, you can then, leverage that to kind of to catapult yourself um, ahead eventually at the right time. Jim says, I try to answer as best I can, and if/when I goof, I admit it and apologize. Yeah, absolutely. If you answer a question and you don't answer it correctly, you can just say, oh man, you know, so and so had it right. I apologize. That's a really cool solution, so and so. And I'll definitely use that in the future, right? Cesar says, how long do you plan to stream? Would love to stay for the whole thing. Well, I think we're probably going to wrap it up here soon. I mean, I was going to maybe wrap it up around 6, but we're having such a good conversation. I'm willing to keep going a little while longer. We'll see. When the questions kind of start to ebb again, then we'll just wrap it up. Russell says, yeah, there are some questions that I leave as, well, at least will we at least know ABCDEF more about the problem? And message me if you find the problem or more info. Yeah, sometimes the problem's not going to get solved, and you gotta leave it out there and let it kind of percolate a little bit and spin in your head, or in the person that asked it spin in their head, and sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, I solved it, and here's how I did it." You know. Bobby says, referring back to the first 3 months on the job thing, Bobby says, you'll learn who Jira is and why everyone hates her. Oh, man. I actually like Jira. So, Jira is kind of a Kanban, agile sort of ticketing system. I actually worked, a previous employer actually used Jira and I loved it. I'm trying to push my current employer they're replacing their ticketing system. I'm actually trying to push my current employer to consider Jira as an option to combine ticketing and Kanban together. I think it's neat. Ube says, hey, Mindwolf, I just finished watching your recent Auth VOD and incorporated Auth into one of my projects, and it works. Woo! So stoked. Yeah, I'm stoked for you. And what Ube has just demonstrated there is a wonderful example of what we were talking about earlier, is just taking those taking tutorials, taking those Lego bricks that you get from tutorials, and then smashing them together to build something different, right? So using tutorials isn't wrong. It's not bad. What's important is what you do with that knowledge. If you just keep doing more and more tutorials and nothing else, then you're never really applying the knowledge that you gain. But if you're doing like what Ube said and just taking that knowledge of like authentication, plucking it out and then plugging it into your own app, then yeah, that's friggin' rad. That's the perfect thing to do. Scotty says Jira's the worst. Oh no. I think I'm in the minority here. I think how good Jira is, it depends on how well it was set up, right? I think there's a lot of configuration that goes into the setup of Jira. And so, yeah, if it's poorly configured, then yeah, you're not going to have a good time. Nice indeed. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so hi, just Eli says, are there use cases where SQL is advantageous over MongoDB? Yeah, so that's a tricky question. So the difference between SQL and MongoDB is that SQL is relational, or generally used with relational databases, and MongoDB is a NoSQL non-relational database solution. And so there can be use cases for both. I would say that neither is necessarily better in all cases than the other. Um, MongoDB is nice because it integrates so well with our full stack apps. It's very, it's very using the skills that we already have with JavaScript and Express. it integrates so well with our apps, right? You don't have to learn SQL to use MongoDB. You can just use the skills you already have with JavaScript and just boop, plug it right in. The nice thing about relational databases is that they are more structured and they're also extremely common. So, the SQL has been around since the 70s. So it's just proliferated all over the world. And so relational databases are probably much more common. Um, and SQL databases can be really great when you need a high volume of extremely structured data. So one of my previous employers was an e-commerce company, and the production facility, which produced a certain variety of items in a certain sequence, and the data really needed to be like, and so a customer would send an image and they would want it on a t-shirt, right? And that product had to travel through the production facility the same way every single time and be printed with the correct image every single time. And that data needed to be extremely structured to make sure that the product got through the factory the same way every single time and follow the same route, same identifications, everything with extremely strict data controls. And so that was all done on relational databases. Um, but if you want to store different types of data, more flexible in the types of data that you store, how you store it, then MongoDB can really be great for that because it's extremely flexible. So different use cases for different strokes for different folks, right? And different times. It's all about the right tool for the job. Real Scotty, I love that answer. So for a little background, so Scotty mentioned earlier, they were able to incorporate SQL into their day job to save themselves about 10 hours a week on the work that they were doing, which is friggin' awesome. I love that. So they were able to use some SQL to automate, to sort of automate stuff, make things a lot faster. And so somebody asks, so do you get more PTO now that you've saved all that time? Do you just take more time off? And Scotty says, I'm the only one that knows I have all this time. Don't snitch on yourself. I still log in Monday through Friday, but I set my stuff to run and I've pretty much got the mornings free to myself. Absolutely. Do that, my friend. Get paid for those hours. Yeah. Because it's not it, a lot of the times if you were to tell your superiors that you have this miraculous solution, they would thank you would get nothing out of it, and then you would get more work, right? So why not just have that time for yourself? I feel like you've still earned those hours. You've earned those hours because you were smart enough to come up with the solution, right? So it's not a loss for the company in any way. Still, the work is still getting done. You're just being rewarded for the work that you put in to automate that solution. So I love that. Don't snitch on yourself. Count Shells says, yeah, I had to watch so many React drag and drop tutorials when building out my extension. Had to learn from the pros. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with watching tutorials. In the end, it's what you do with them, right? If you do nothing but watch tutorials and never do anything else, then you're not really ever applying what you've learned, as I said before. But if you're watching tutorials with a goal in mind to say, like, I need to watch these tutorials so that I can learn React and then build my project, my true vision, then yeah, I'd go for it. Just use what you learn. And Real Scotty says, I'm using that time to study web dev like I'm getting paid to educate myself. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Right answer. Welcome, Blue PT. Absolutely check out those Leon links. 100 devs, free web dev education. Don't have to pay anything. It's all community taught. So welcome. Drain says the deeper you get into this kind of thing, the more you get paid for what you know instead of what you do. Yeah. The savings is getting paid for what you know. Yeah, exactly. It's less about like how many tasks can you complete and more about, getting paid for just having your knowledge available to everybody else. They're paying to keep your brain on the payroll. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And I love it when, you've got that person that's been been on the team for 10, 20 years or something. And they have all the knowledge, and when they're willing to, to share that knowledge with you, that's a really valuable thing. So a good company is going to try to keep those people around. Brett Kane says, I literally decided to change career paths after having a conversation with a friend in tech who told me about getting paid for what you can do, not the amount of what you do. Yeah, absolutely. And so, like on my current team at work, we're all working together on the same project right now. We're all doing different components of it. Um, and there's some people that work faster than others. But do we get paid differently? No, because we all contribute in different ways, right? It's not about how fast you can churn this stuff out. It's more about, we have a really good team, and even though some of us are faster than others, that doesn't mean that the people who work a little slower not don't know as much. They just have a different style of working. And so there's no punishment for that, right? We all know we're going for the same goal, and we're going there as a team. And, the people who don't work quite as quickly, they contribute in other ways too. Obviously, so you're saying you just become possibilities? I suppose so, but I think what you're part of what you're doing is as you gain more knowledge, what you should be doing is enabling others to get there faster than you did, right? So the company is, also helping themselves by the more knowledgeable people it keeps on, the faster the new people will be able to get up to speed. Yeah, great products aren't built by great coders. Great products are built by great teams. Yeah, unless you're like Roller Coaster Tycoon, which was built by one person in assembly. There's of course there's notable examples out there like Undertale and Stardew Valley and Roller Coaster Tycoon, but the vast majority of quality, you know, apps and content out there are built by a dedicated team of people that are working truly working together. Exactly. So finding a team that has that ability to work together in a positive way is a really excellent thing. You're kidding? Yeah. No, my Fitbit was just telling me that I'm earning a bunch of activity points because I've been standing for so long and like moving around. Yeah, I check. I didn't check my like pulse rate while I'm streaming, and it's surprisingly high. Like I'm like I don't know if it's the brain power or what, but yeah, I'm technically exercising. Aaron Bush says, I need a standing desk. Yeah. And that's another thing with ergonomics. So Leon always likes to talk about like keeping yourself healthy through ergonomics. And that's important too. It's not just about, hunching over a desk until you know, until you learn the thing. It's about taking healthy breaks. It's about, you know, treating yourself to ergonomic accessories when needed. So for my normal desk where I actually do work, this is not my work computer. For my normal desk where I do my work, that is a sit down desk, but I have a nice chair. So I stay fairly comfortable with that. And I also have a vertical mouse because for a while, when after I started working from home, I started getting really terrible pain in my hands, in my right hand. I was getting thumb pain. My fingers were burning. It was so bad. I was wearing a brace. I was wearing a finger splint. It was really awful. I thought I had permanently injured myself, and it was just because I was using a mouse, for work all day, and then I would come to my personal computer and use a mouse with that all, for the rest of the evening. Um, and what I ended up doing is the brace didn't do anything. And so I eventually tried a vertical mouse. So it makes your wrist go into a different shape. And within like a week or two, my hand pain was gone. And so you got to be careful about ergonomics or you will permanently injure yourself. It seems weird. It seems like how could I injure myself just by sitting at a computer? You absolutely can and will if you aren't careful. If you don't take healthy breaks, if you don't treat yourself ergonomically. So my work desk, I sit down. When I'm doing my streams, I stand. Keeps me healthier, keeps me moving. It lets me be a little bit more animated. and it makes sure I'm not sitting for 16 hours in a day. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on ergonomic stuff. So my standing desk that I'm standing at right now, it's one of those IKEA tables, like an IKEA coffee table, except it has those extendable legs. So I just have the legs extended all the way up. And I have my monitor that I normally share with. I have that on that, and I have my microphone there. And then I have my secondary monitor where I see Stream Chat. I have that sitting on literally like a built-in desk that was already there, a sit-down desk with a stack of books on it. So desk, stack of books, secondary monitor, camera on top of that monitor. So I didn't have to spend very much money on that at all. I used books I already had. So you can figure out something that works without spending thousands of dollars on ergonomics. Eska says push-ups, sit streaming is the ultimate full body workout. Apparently, according to my Fitbit. Doesn't feel like I'm working out, but gotta hydrate and posture check. All right. There we go. Grat Kane says, very interested in what chair you have. So I got lucky. I used to work in an office before the pandemic. My current employer, had a cube farm, and I worked there. It was not good. I do not like working in a cube. I feel like everybody's like looking at you all the time, and it's very loud, and did not like but however, when we got to go home, I got to take my chair. As long as I signed it out, I took the chair home. So it's a steel case, which is a very expensive chair, but you can find reasonably priced chairs from IKEA and stuff that have similar features, without having to spend, steel cases are very expensive. So I wouldn't necessarily just recommend going out and buying one. You can also find office chairs on Craigslist and eBay, from those types of brands. So like Steelcase and Aeron, yeah, those are the two big brands. Aaron Bush says, I left plumbing for this career. I had carpal tunnel flare ups weekly and wore a brace sometimes. It sucked. Yeah, absolutely. Digging was destroying my wrists and back. Going under a counter was destroying my neck and giving me headaches. Yeah, any repetitive action that you do over and over is just going to stress your body out over time. So you got to find ways to mitigate that. Even coding, like I said, even coding can do that to you. Whether you're sitting down at a desk all day or reaching under kitchen sinks all day. Yeah, anything repetitive is going to mess you up over time. At least until cloning technology steps up its game, we've only got one body. Yeah. Chelsea says, yes, I had to take a day off work due to neck pain last week. It wasn't due to my desk setup, but I did make some ergonomic improvements and got a new monitor stand this weekend. Yeah. So even if it doesn't seem like it's caused by your particular setup, you can still, be healthier for yourself by making things better ergonomically. And one thing I really like about my large monitor is that I can raise and lower it. So my current standing desk doesn't raise and lower, but I can just lower the monitor so I can sit down. So it's very like I can swivel, raise, lower, tilt, and it works really well. Welcome, Burek. Eclectic Nerd said, I got an adjustable desk on Wayfair for less than $100. Absolutely. There's so many options out there, especially now that everybody's working from home. Eclectic says, but I did invest in a good chair. It makes a world of difference. Yeah. So I've heard a quote one time that I absolutely love, and it's where you spend the most money should be on the things between you and the ground. So that being chairs, your office chair, your mattress, and your shoes. That's where you should spend your money to keep you healthy in the long run. The things that are fighting gravity for you is what you should spend money on. Real Scotty says, I have one of those Powerball gyros, which I use when my wrist gets a bit sore. Oh, nice. Yeah. Happy says, before standing desk for a thing, I had a big breakfast tray. Yeah. Rascal says, my chair is literally one of those from Leon's board meeting photos. I was shocked looking at the image and being like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I actually used one of those at a previous employer. I found them incredibly uncomfortable, but I'm glad it works for you. Chelsea says, I'm spoiled at work with a Herman Miller chair, so the one I have at home feels like sitting on a stack of bricks. Yeah, a great seat cushion can really help. Oh yeah, like if you get like one of those purple brand seats, those are great. Those are supposed to be really ergonomic. I haven't tried one, but take your word for it there. Driftwood says, invest your back, right? Invest in your back, invest in your feet. Yeah. Count the Shell says, I used to use a wooden dining room chair. It was a long day. Yeah. When we first started working from home, and I was like, this is going to be a temporary thing, right? 2 weeks and we're back. I used one of those wooden chairs too. It was not good for any part of my body. Bobby says, my monitor stand is a plastic ice cream tub. I love it. Booty Mean says, Herman Miller chairs are so expensive. Why are they the price of a car note? Yeah, they're just highly customizable, and they're one of those legacy brands. Um, but I guess you don't have to get one of those, right? You could just read the reviews online, and IKEA has some pretty good options now, I think. There's lots of brands out there. I have a cushion folding chair from Target. Okay, whatever works. What dude says I have a gamer chair. I can't wait to replace with an ergo chair. Yeah, I have a gamer. I have a gamer chair too. It's actually right now. It's sitting out on my back porch because I don't have any use for it because it was not comfortable. Yep, I have one of those racing car style chairs that I got secondhand because I thought it was going to be perfect, and now it's like I feel like I'm sitting like this whenever I sit in it. Yeah, you can get them on sale, secondhand, Craigslist, eBay. Yeah. Aaron Bush says, I was asking an application if I thought a computer would ever pass the Turing test. What do you think mine will? Okay, so yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to get super, specific on this, but in general, the Turing test is where you can set a person and a computer or computational device in a single room, and you have a solid wall separating the computer from the person. Um, and the person talks to the computer, and basically we have to see the computer will pass the Turing test if it can be indistinguishable from a real person on the other side of the wall. So with modern like chatbots and things, I think functionally we're nearly there. For example, there was an example from a person at Google, an employee of Google, who was working on a chatbot, an advanced chatbot, and became convinced that it was real. Um, was it real? No. Was it or I should say, became convinced that it was sentient, that it could truly think for itself, that it was equivalent to a sentient being. Was it sentient? No, but it could approximate a reasonable facsimile of being sentient by giving clever answers to questions, extrapolating based on what the interviewer said, and that kind of thing, and some selective editing as well was done. And so I think the specific Turing test could probably be conquered within the next decade or so. But will computers become sentient and we end up with a Skynet situation? No, I don't believe so. Not for a very long time. I think we're gonna get to the point where we can have very good approximations of how people react in conversations. But sentience is a different beast. Yeah, it's similar to Ex Machina, the movie Ex Machina, which I believe is on HBO Max right now. If you wanted to watch it, very good movie. Some very good questions about what does it mean to be human, and when does a non-human object exceed its programming, if it can exceed its programming. Um, is it carrying out the wishes of its creator that it was programmed with, or is it truly doing something novel and innovative? In the end, yeah, what is it? Can that occur? So yeah, very good movie. And so it says, uh, been talking about like expensive mattresses and stuff. The best mattress I've ever had was from Purple. That's what Grat Kane mentioned. And then Quinn Sob says, dog beds too. I don't have the mattress myself, but my 17-year-old dog has one. Yeah, I had a similar situation with a dog bed, Casper dog bed, and then regular old mattress for me. But a memory foam dog bed from Casper. Yeah. Bertrand says good movie. Yeah, very good movie. Okay, well, do we have any last questions? I think we're probably going to start wrapping things up. I've really enjoyed the discussion today, but feel free to ask any last questions. We'll go until 6:30 here. Um, so 10 minutes and then we'll wrap it up and find someone good to raid. Rascal 2 says, if it's programmed to exceed its programming, then the exceeding of its programming is actually its programming. Therefore, it never exceeded its programming, but that means, yeah. And that's kind of the fundamental question that Ex Machina asks in that movie, is very similar to what Rascal stated there. Sub says, he's a good boy, he deserves the best. Indeed. Dogs do deserve the best. And cats too, but it's sometimes harder to tell what cats want than dogs. You buy a cat a bed and they'll just sleep in the box it came in. Chelsea says, new mattress will be one of my first post new job purchases. Yeah, I think that's an excellent purchase to make. Again, protect your back, protect all the things that sit between you and the ground with shoes, mattresses, um, yeah, and chairs or cushions. Corky says, what is something you wish you did differently when you were hunting for jobs? Great question. I think I wish I had had a better understanding of how to improve my online presence. I was really, really focused. Like when I was the last time I actually was hunting for jobs, I was really focused on just the resume. Um, right? Like I got to have the perfect resume. My resume has to be perfect. And then I didn't really think about anything else about my online presence. Like, I mean, I had a LinkedIn, but I mean, I'd really just like put my resume on there and, left it at that. Um, didn't really just focusing I had too much of a focus on just the resume and not my whole online persona. So didn't have a GitHub, only had the bare minimum on LinkedIn. Didn't really have any other, online accounts that said like, hey, this is me, this is all the cool stuff I can do. I didn't have any kind of portfolio or anything like that. I had this really old fashioned way of thinking about job hunting, which was get your resume perfect and then apply to a bunch of jobs. Which, as Leon says, that is not the way to do it. What you really want to do is, network your way into a position, establish relationships, and then network your way into a position, which puts you in a much, better bargaining spot, right? So yeah, I had a very old fashioned approach to getting a job, and now I have I think a much more modern view of how to do that. Personally, I'm not looking right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not beefing up my online presence, making myself so that once I eventually do want to look for a job, years down the line, then I will have an established and robust online presence, and people can look and be like, wow, she's been putting things out there online for a few years now, like, really established, obviously knows her stuff. We want this person on our team, right? So instead of me doing all the work, it turns into people you just kind of sitting there and letting people find you, right? That's a much easier way to do it. But the hard part is getting all that stuff set up in the first place. But again, you got to do it. Like Leon says, what does he say? You gotta let it sit out there and marinate for a while. Yeah, that's the way. Great question. Any last questions before we wrap up? My dog is right here. I think he thinks it's dinner time. Not, but he doesn't know what day it is. Trista said, "So are you just learning this for the fun of learning it?" Mostly, yeah. This is something I wanted to learn. I felt like I owed it to myself to branch out a little bit on my developer journey. Going into this, I only knew SQL, and I didn't feel like that was how I wanted to live my life. I was like, I want to be more well rounded. I didn't go into this saying like I want a new job. I came into this thinking I owe it to myself to be more well-rounded. So that's why I'm doing it. And it's led to more opportunities than I could ever have imagined, right? The streaming gig, a huge presence on Twitter, um, and new connections, networks, relationships that I can leverage at some point in the future to continue to better myself. So it's been amazing and well worth it. So investing in myself will lead to, returns on that investment somewhere down the line. It'll definitely pay off. Corky says, what's a project you worked on that turned out better than you expected? I started learning some SharePoint automation for just a side project I was doing. I got so frustrated with the process at work that I was like, I'm going to learn how to automate this. I don't care what it takes. And so I learned how to use the modern features of SharePoint Online and Microsoft Power Automate, which is very powerful. Learned a bunch of stuff about that, and I was able to do way more features with the project than I ever thought. It was really cool. Learned a ton, and that project that I did, that SharePoint automation project, was a huge project that I could showcase on my resume and in interviews. I was really able to talk up that project and the concepts that I learned without ever writing any code. That project did not involve any code, but it involved the types of concepts that you work on when you are doing a coding project. Research, development, iteration, getting feedback from others. And so that I talked that project up really highly in my dev job interview, and it worked. How am I going to enjoy the rest of my day? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm probably going to have some dinner after this. It's about dinner time where I'm at. So I'm probably going to make dinner, have some veggies and, chill out, maybe chill out a little bit. It's been a busy weekend. So I have a really good book I'm reading on my Kindle. So I'm excited to get back to that actually. I'm enjoying the stream, but I also want to keep reading my book. It's called Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Um, Very good so far. Sci-fi. I love sci-fi, so I'm digging it. Askew says somewhere Diviker is smiling. Always like to make Diviker happy. Diviker deserves all the happiness. Hey, Adorinto and Iwan, welcome. Just turn the stream into a book club, all problem solved. Hey, I would be down for that, but I think it would somewhat go against the grain of what people are expecting when they tune in to me. I'd be down though. 100 books. All right. So let's go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to doing this again. Um, I imagine it'll be a similar thing next weekend. I don't know when Leon is intending to resume office hours, but I think we're going to kind of keep with this pattern until he does intend to resume office hours. So we're just going to kind of fill that gap and then defer to him when he is ready to come back. Um, Oh, I got some good book recommendations there. I'll when I check out the VOD later, I will I'll grab those. All right, let's find somebody good to raid. But also too, before next Sunday, I do have my normal stream on Wednesday. So I imagine on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we will cover whatever Leon assigns for homework on Tuesday. I imagine there will be something new that will be assigned on Tuesday. I don't know whether it will be authentication or more crud or something. But that's probably what we'll cover on Wednesday. If there is no new homework, then we'll probably do another crud project just to reinforce those crud, get those crud muscles a little stronger. But we'll see. So keep in touch on my Twitter, !Twitter, if you want to follow me to see my stream topics ahead of time. My stream schedule is on my Twitch page. And yeah, so let's go ahead and find someone to raid. First, I need to find, pull this over here, zoom out. I'm way zoomed in. All right. Let's find someone good to raid and make somebody's day. Raids. Raids. Okay, so we got Eduardo, Sympathy, CM Griffing, and Midnight Simon. So we've done Griffing and Simon fairly recently. Yeah, Purple Elf, CM Griffing. No worries, folks. Glad you all enjoyed the stream today. I think Eduardo, they only do streams in Spanish or Portuguese on the weekend. I forget which one. I think it's Spanish. Maybe wrong. But yeah, they don't do streams in English on the weekend, so we'll skip them for now. I'm so sorry about that. It's okay. Everybody's fine. There was just something loud that got knocked over. I was storing some extra stuff in the room, and my dog bumped into it and knocked it over. Sorry. Um, no, it's all good. We're all fine. Dog's fine. I'm fine. It's just loud. All right. So yeah, let's do sympathy. We haven't done them in a while. Um, yeah, let's go ahead and hit them up. All right. All right. Starting the raid now. And I will see you all again on Wednesday after Tuesday's class because we need to manifest that class is going to happen on Tuesday. So, all right, raid is starting. See you all on Wednesday. Bye bye.